Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and it is Hangout number 47. Yes, hello, everyone who is in the chat room. Hey, who's here? Whoa, okay, more people showed up. I'm glad because I did kind of change the day on you and flip that all around. So I'm glad to see everyone here. Let me say hello to Joe, who rolled in first, and then we have, hold on a second, I'm trying to, okay. Joe is here, Lisa Ann is here, Doreen, hi. Christiana is here. I hope I saying your name right. Doreen is here. Molly is here. Allison is here. Radisson Robin is here. Lisa S is here. And I hope I didn't miss anybody so far. Oh, hold on a second. Sorry. The flies are swarming again. My indoor fly problem I can't seem to cure at the moment. Anyway. All right. So hold on a second. I also can't see out of my glasses. So there's some interesting topics today. Oh, hold on a second. I forgot to turn off my phone. And it's potential spam. No, it is spam. It's not even potential. Okay, let me get the phone taken care of here. Oh, gosh. It's all good, except I look like a lobster. You know, I've been going to the pool every day. And now when I get in front of the camera and I'm trying to adjust the lights, I'm like, why am I so red? You know, and I can't seem to fix it. So I've been cooking in the sun. So I'm going to talk. Oh, it's a whole bunch of things today, which you have no idea what I was going to talk about because I didn't get that list to you. I am going to talk about Marilyn Monroe. I'm going to talk about, let me look at my little list here. I'm going to be talking about Phoebe Prince and the bullying of Phoebe Prince. I'll be talking about Anneke Lucas, who is a woman that claims that she was sold into child sex ring in Belgium. I will be talking about, I'm going to be talking about, well, Alex Murdaugh, because he just got arrested for killing his wife and son. Oh, didn't see that coming. Actually, I didn't see that coming because I didn't think they had enough evidence. And I'll discuss that in a minute as to why he's even getting arrested, because I think that's kind of amazing. A little bit curious. So I'm going to be talking also about mental health in connection with a lot of these issues about what's happening with bullying, what's happening with suicides, what's happening with these child sex rings or people's claims to be in them, and how that plays into a lot of things. And also, in each one of these cases, how the media also presents these things to us so that we may not have an accurate understanding of the entire situation. We're only getting a piece of it, and then we're emotionally becoming involved over a piece of it. So I think those are all the topics. And let me get my glasses back on so I can see. All right. Now, can you all hear and see me, by the way? Lisa says, Pat, you're glowing nice and tan. Yeah, I may be a little too tomato-y, but do let me know if you can hear me properly before I keep going. And if you'd like to be in this chat room and you're here for the first time seeing one of these shows, people in the chat room are my supporters on Patreon. And you can go below and there's a link and you can click that and then you can join in all the live shows. All my shows do go public after the live portion. So you can see everything just by subscribing. So please do subscribe to the channel. That does help a great deal. And Doreen says we can see and hear you. All right, cool. All right, so that's my pitch to you guys. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. You can hit the super thanks and even help out that way to support the channel. Or you can join Patreon, $5 a month, and you're part of this great community. All right. So, any rate. Oh, that's very nice. I like that. So, and Lisa says, welcome all new members. And we really do get to know each other here. So when we get new members, we also get to know them as they show up and participate. And we do have a great group. Robin says, Alex Murdaugh has been in jail for a while. That is true. But that was not for the murders of his wife and son. That was for everything else he's done, which is like a laundry list like this long of all kinds of other squirrely crap he was involved in. So, yeah. So let's go to Murdaugh. Let's just talk about the buzzard. And he has, if you don't know, let me just try to pull him up really quickly here so you can see what he's been about. So in case you don't know who this guy is, somebody said his name is not pronounced Alex Murdaugh, but Alec. So I don't know if that's correct because it looks like it's got an X on the end of the Alex part, but somebody said that was not right. And I don't actually watch television news. I don't, because it drives me crazy. So I don't oftentimes hear the actual name. So I may be a little, unless I remember to check it out before I do the show, I don't really know. So that's this guy anyway, the pudgy lawyer dude. And so here's a story. Disgraced. I like the way I start out. Yeah, you might say that. Disgraced South Carolina attorney Alex Murdaugh has been indicted for the 2021 murders of his wife and son by a grand jury. So he's been disbarred. Well, he should have been. Yeah, he had already. Let's see. I'm trying to see if they can point out what he was originally arrested for. Lord, there's so much on this guy now. He was charged with a slew, as they put it, of alleged financial crimes. So he was already being held on $7 million bond. And he also, supposedly somebody tried to kill him. Sure. And so that was also questionable. So now here's what they say. They reopened investigations into what happened to his wife and son, who supposedly, let me go. I got to go back to the beginning. Okay, wait a minute. This is too confusing for even me, because it's a. Let me just go to Wikipedia, make it easy for myself and you, because there's so much behind this. But I just want to at least let you know what the basics are before I tell you why he was arrested for this. All right, let me just go to Wikipedia. They are good. What? There's no Wikipedia page on the dude? How is that possible? Usually it's a Wikipedia page on somebody like a day after they become well known. What? How is this? This can't be true. Alex, what could you do not to get your own Wikipedia page? Okay, wait, I'm putting Wikipedia in here now because that's just crazy. Oh, there you go. It came under the Murdaugh family, the entire family. Okay, so they're a prominent American legal family in South Carolina. And they were in charge of prosecuting all the criminal cases in the 14th Circuit Court. So they were like big people. But in 2019, amid allegations of special treatment, several members of the Murdaugh family were implicated in a fatal boating accident. In 2021, 2 members of the family were murdered, while another was implicated in mishandling funds. And since now, Alex Murdaugh has been charged with the murders of his family. So there's a bunch of, oh Lord. I would have to do it. I might have to do an entire show on this guy because it's so overwhelming. Wow. I mean, this is a long page. So, all right now. Hey, yeah. I'm just even trying to. Okay. Okay, here's the part on what he's been arrested for now. So on June 7th, 2021, Alex, discovered the bodies of 22-year-old son Paul and 52-year-old wife Maggie near the dog kennels at the family's hunting lodge in Islandton, South Carolina. Both had been shot multiple times with different weapons. Alex reported that at the time of the killings, he had been with his terminally ill father and his mother, who had dementia. Dad's out of it, and mom can't be a witness because she doesn't remember him even being there. And then the father died 3 days later. But check into that one too. He might have knocked his daddy off. So anyway, in October 2021, it was revealed that SLED had regarded Alex as a person of interest in the homicides since the start of the investigation. So then, just now, July 2022, they charged him with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime in the deaths of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. The indictment says Alex shot his wife with a rifle and his son with a shotgun. That was kind of smart, actually, because usually when you have 2 weapons used in a crime, the assumption is there are 2 different people. So the guy's not an idiot. He has been prosecuting crimes. But on the other hand, in spite of the fact he should know better and how to actually commit a crime, well, I point this out all the time. When it comes down to the real thing, something doesn't always go right, So sources close to the investigation. Okay, so we only have sources at this point, so we don't even know how much of this is true. Said that high-velocity blood spatter on Alex's clothing, as well as cell phone footage, had placed Murdaugh at the scene when his wife and son were shot dead. Okay, so, all right, so it's been, I guess, a little over a year. So the real question is, what took so long? Because I would assume that if you had blood spatter on his clothing, high velocity blood spatter, you pretty much know he done did it right there because it's their blood on his clothing, and the cell phone data puts him in the area. So I'm not quite sure what took this entire year. There's been a lot of speculation over all kinds of things with this guy, and all of a sudden this comes up. Now, it may just be that they've always known, they've had their eye on him, and they're just trying to build a case against somebody maybe they're concerned about, has a good lawyer, maybe one of his own family, but somebody who, he might get off if he don't have a good, solid, strong, airtight case. And at a certain point, they already had him in custody, so they weren't worried about him killing off anybody else. So, but it is interesting that he did finally get arrested for that. One had to figure he did that one. So when we're having a conversation in here as to how the name is pronounced, I'm really not sure. So I should have looked it up. I try to hear it from the family themselves so that I don't get somebody like me mispronouncing it, because sometimes you can listen to someone on, it could be a television commentator, a news host or whatever, somebody on YouTube, and they can't pronounce it either. They just assumed it was a certain way, and then everybody assumes that. So only unless somebody has actually talked to the family and heard it, then you know how it's pronounced. So, you're surprised. I was shocked when he was charged with the murders. I guess I didn't want to believe he could kill his son and his wife. Sure. Well, good point there. It's interesting. We often think, you didn't raise your wife or your husband from baby time. And you often think that even if someone can kill off a spouse, that could be a spouse they've gotten tired of and actually don't even like anymore and wish would go away anyhow. You've just got that bitter thing going there in a long-term marriage. So maybe it just don't care that much anymore. And so what? But your own son, yeah, that's a lot harder. Even if you think, okay, that guy could have done one, how would he do that to some child he's raised? And all I can say is this: if you're a psychopath, the sentence I've always used is psychopaths. You can take away all the other explanations about psychopaths, how they think, what they do. And here's what I always believe a psychopath is and how he thinks. A psychopath either thinks you're useful or you're in the way. You're useful or you're in the way. So a lot of times with psychopaths, their wives are useful and their children are useful as long as they're enjoying their company, or as long as they serve a purpose. You marry a rich wife, she might be bringing in money so you don't have, so you can do whatever you want to do. You can enjoy your children so you can prove that you're manly or something. You could produce kids, or that the kids are cute and look up to you all the time. Like, yes, daddy, yes, daddy. And then those stupid kids get to an age and they don't say that anymore. And they start going, I don't think that's stupid, Dad. And suddenly they're in the way. And suddenly your wife isn't as pretty anymore. And she's in the way of your new girlfriend that you want. So that's how it changes. And it can change very quickly if you're psychopathic, because we're looking at it the wrong way. We're looking at the person having emotional involvement with that person, that they love them at some point. Psychopath doesn't necessarily love his children ever, or ever love his wife, just useful. And then one day they're in the way. And if they're in the way, they don't really care what those people feel. I mean, they're so narcissistic. They don't care about the person's feelings that they're killing, that they're taking away their life and their future. That doesn't matter. What does he care? It's his future that matters. So yeah, I certainly believe he could do it. All right. So let's see. Well, Lisa, that's a nice way of thinking. His son could literally have been in the way of that shooting, except that he used two different weapons. So I'm not going to say that really could play into this. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be there, but when he got in the way, it was in the way of the planned murder. I'm going to say there's probably many other opportunities to knock off the wife. If he just wanted to knock off the wife, I believe he wanted to eliminate them both. So he did. I think they were both a problem to him at that point in time. So, and the fact that he used two different weapons means he planned this sucker. He planned that out, knowing, as a prosecutor might, that they're going to suspect two different people are involved, and therefore it wouldn't be just him. So I think that's wasn't too. That's pretty smart in one way. It's just that if they really have his blood splattered clothing, I don't know where they got that from, because how dumb are you? He has to know about how blood spatter works. So he could claim, I don't know, I can't remember. I don't know that I don't remember the whole story here, so I'll have to go back and look at everything. I don't know if he found the bodies and then could claim he touched them and got blood on his clothing, but he should know there's a difference between transfer blood when you touch somebody and you go like this, or you're trying to give them a CPR or whatever, and blood gets on you, and you're firing a weapon and the back spatter goes whack, and spatters tons of little drops. It looks different, and he's got to know that. So I don't know. How did they get hold of his clothing? Why was he in the clothing that he was wearing when he shot them? So I'm looking forward to finding a little bit more information on this as to, where they got the clothing from. That's what I'm real surprised about. I figured at this point that they didn't have anything like that, but now they claim they do. So I don't know. We're going to have to wait and find out. All right. So now let's go on to some other things here. This is just a funny one, just because it made me laugh. You know how I talk about, you got to be careful what you read in the media, because it's important that we understand things. And a lot of times you have to say, look, 50% of the story is not quite believable. So maybe I shouldn't believe all of this. I'm going to have to really check it out. And I'm going to do a show on Scott Peterson this Sunday, which is 2 days from now. And if you're tuning in now and you want to be in that chat room for Scott Peterson, please click below, join Patreon. There you go. And you can be in the chat room for the Scott Peterson show. And one of the things that's said by one of the people I'm going to be talking about in the show is that when they wanted to make sure they could corroborate a story, a piece of information from more than one source. But guess what? The media steals their stories from each other. So sometimes you'll have 20 different sources on one piece of information, and it's wrong in all 20 sources because they never investigate their own stuff anymore. It's not like when you're a journalist, at least it used to be theoretically, you investigated the entire story and you made sure that everything you put in your story, you went to the source. But now they just steal everybody else's story and chuck it into theirs. So some of the most ridiculous stories get repeated, and the facts that aren't even facts get repeated over and over and over again, proliferates. And so you can't depend on that anymore, that, I found 5 different sources that said this. And they got it from the same place. So how does that prove anything? So you just got to be careful of that. Very, very careful of that. And this one is just a funny story, which just made me laugh. So, and it shows sometimes how the media says stuff, and they'll change it on you too. So this is a story about, let me find it here. Okay. Sorry about that. I don't even see all the flies going around here. It's driving me insane. It'll go away by winter, but I really don't want to wait that long. So anyway, this is in the Daily Mail, and I repeat again that it's interesting to say that the Daily Mail actually usually has more useful information on crime stories, and many other stories actually has many more details. So I actually do use them as a reference because it's handy. But I'm not saying they don't sometimes get things wrong and don't deserve to be called the Daily Fail. All right, so this one is American tourist 23 is injured. Now, that isn't what they said originally. They said received horrific injuries. This was the original thing, okay? And it's been changed, but it was horrific injuries. So American tourist 23 received horrific injuries after toppling into Mount Vesuvius when he tried to retrieve his cell phone that slipped while he took a selfie at the summit. All right, so now you're like, oh my God, a guy fell into the volcano. And at first, you're seeing fire and molten lava, right? Yeah, Mount Vesuvius is not exactly functioning that way these days. This is where he went, and so he's trying to get this great picture. And this is apparently where he actually fell. Now, also, what's interesting is, so they're saying received horrific injuries, right? And then if you read further, they'll say that he fell a few meters. a few meters. Okay, so he tumbled a little bit and went. You want to see his horrific injuries? Oh, and while I'm at it, I want to point out they also said let me come up with the correct word he used. And that's also the correct word is also now missing that they used before, but it was like, let me find a synonym because I can't remember the original one. Brawny, I think brawny, his brawny body, horrific injuries to his brawny body. Now, I want you to comment on the horrific injuries and his brawny body. Oh, sorry, that's definitely not him. Although these days it could be him. That wasn't him. No, it's this. All right, folks in the chat room. Horrific injuries to his brawny body. What are your thoughts? Oh, well, that's true, by the way. Just while we're waiting for those comments, being a salacious rag, it's probably not surprising that the Daily Fail prints in-depth details about crimes. I guess everything has its use, no matter how tawdry. Yes, and then also the National Enquirer is actually one of my resources for many years for crime because it actually had a lot of good stuff in it. But you are also correct, Christian. The Sun is way worse. The Sun is garbage. I mean, I actually like the Daily Mail in comparison to the Sun. The Sun is a piece of crap. There you go. He looks a bit scraped up and a lot out of shape. Don't you? Nasty, but not horrific. Yeah, he's got like road rash. You know what I mean? Clearly, this dude did not go to the hospital with some scrape on his back. I mean, really? And yeah, he's a little bit porky, a little bit porky, out of shape, a flab bag, and it's just so funny because the comments were actually probably the best part of the entire article because that's true. That's right. Looks like a kid's bike crash where the mom puts on a couple of plasters and sends them back out. Exactly. Oh my God, that's so funny. And the comments were hysterical. So the comments are like, that dude never got off the couch in his life until he took that selfie, and so later on, interesting enough, the Daily Mail quickly, and it's amazing because, it's on the internet. So in a minute, boom, 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 those words disappeared out of the articles because somebody was looking at that going, oh man, I guess horrific injuries wasn't quite right. And brawny may not have been accurate either. So they just completely wiped out those words. So suddenly they were gone. So anyway, and the guy deserved what he got because apparently he jumped a turnstile or didn't go through the proper gate. He didn't pay the fee. He snuck around. He went on a forbidden path to do something wrong. And so he got arrested. Good. You deserve to be arrested, you jerk. So anyway, I thought that one was interesting. Then just to point out again, some media issues, which I want you to pay attention to because whenever you're going to do kind of your own investigation, your own trying to understand things. Okay, here's one. Now check this out. This is Newsweek. Oh Lord, that's a whole nother thing. This is now called the zombie newspaper, and in a sense, zombie media. Why is it called that? It's because Newsweek once used to be one of the prominent. You saw it in every store. It was had all the top stories, political, national, international, very well researched. It was something to be proud of. Well, it got sold and it got sold again, and apparently now it's just this is garbage media that they'll pretty much put anything on, and it's absolute trash now. I mean, I keep seeing the word Newsweek, and I go there and I go, what the heck is this? So here, see this family and parenting? So Jack Beresford, who considers himself, I guess, a journalist, and by the way, a lot of times journalists these days, with quotes around it, are just people who they can get free stuff from because they're allowed to get their name in print if they give them a story, but they don't pay them. So an awful lot of journalists these days are actually not paid for any of their work. The same way they don't pay for people to go on television shows either. A lot of times news shows have almost all quote guests on there because they don't want to pay them and they don't want to say they paid anybody. So they call them guests. So this Jack, who probably didn't get paid, has this article, Internet Stunned After Teen Discovers Why Mom Abandoned Him at Age 2. Okay, so interesting. Whoops, I just hit my table. So why was he abandoned at age 2? Oh, it's a very heartfelt story. And I'm reading it. I'm going, this is a bunch of bull if I ever a bull in my life. Where did they get this story from? Took me a while. Do you know where he got it from? Reddit. He got it from Reddit. Now, mind you, Reddit can be useful. I go to Reddit a lot because I can get links to things. So people say, oh, I read this book. I saw this movie. I saw this documentary. I can get some really good information off of Reddit. But I recognize Reddit is no different than people putting crap on Facebook or Twitter. It's not. When one person puts something on, it's not necessarily credible. So this guy writes this complete pile of garbage, and they put it in Newsweek as if it has any truth to it. And of course, they didn't actually put the link to the actual Reddit post. They just said it was from Reddit at some point. I'm like, and then somebody, oh my God, look what happened to this guy. And they get all invested in this, and it's just a pile of garbage. So you got to really be careful about where things come from. Oh, I'm so sorry, Megan. I dropped my new cell phone in my pool and dove right in, even though I was wearing my work clothes. I wasn't fast enough. Would not have dove into a volcano. Well, the volcano wasn't actually a volcano at the time. It was just rocks, But if you kept falling, eventually I guess those rocks toss you off a cliff, and then you're at the bottom of the inactive volcano and probably pretty dead at that point. So, so in the instance again of stories, here's another story which I saw in Dear Abby, and again we have to look and say what's missing out of stories. Here's one that says, Dear Abby, my daughter-in-law claims I do nothing to be a grandmother to her girls. That's horrible. I'm a grandmother. I'd hate my daughter to say I wasn't a grandmother to my granddaughter. Dear Abby, I recently posted on Facebook how I never get any recognition from my only son on my birthday. Hello, red flag. What's the red flag, folks? I recently posted on Facebook about how I never get any recognition from my only son on my birthday. I'm seeing right here why your only son may not want to have much to do with you, lady. What could it be? Anybody there? Anybody? Why wouldn't you be up? Why would that be a problem? I don't see anybody commenting, so I'm going to say, there you go. Thank you, Doreen. Posting a whiny complaint on Facebook. Worse than a whiny complaint. I mean, I put whiny, well, I've said some amusing, I'm always aware that my Facebook page is open to the public. And sometimes, oh, I and only son. Oh, that's another good point. So Facebook can just be your friends and family, but you do not go to a location that is, you're expressing things to a group of people and possibly the entire world. A nasty thing about your son, putting it out there for everybody to see. If somebody came and said to me, my mother didn't even send me a birthday card for my birthday. Well, you want to see how quickly I'll kill that relationship. I'm like, you're going to put that in the public eye? I mean, even if I did not send you a card or give you a present or whatever, because we actually don't celebrate that way here. So you don't tell the public that. That's rude and mean and cruel and unacceptable. So it's something wrong with you if you do that. But then she says this, I never receive any recognition from my son on my birthday, Mother's Day, or any holiday. Oh, she wants them all. All of them. My daughter-in-law, she doesn't say whether he... my daughter-in-law then responded that I care more about my dogs than my grandchildren. I live in Florida and they live in Kansas. Last year, I offered to fly the girls to Florida for a visit, but was told no. Okay. I have asked that they come for a visit, but no visits have happened. Okay, right there. When we're looking at information, look at what's missing in that story. So you can start understanding where people's truth and lies are, where they are. First of all, she doesn't mention how old the girls are. We don't know if they're 4 and 6 years old, or whether they're 10 and 12. We don't know why they're not coming. Are they not coming because the parents think they're too little to go down there? Is it because they're teenagers and don't want to go down there? And the parents are like, I don't want to tell your grandmother, you just don't want to hang out with her, What is the reason? We don't know. But she goes on. I live alone and have 5 rescue dogs, 3 rescue cats, and foster abandoned kittens. Oh, maybe it's because you're crazy. No, if you rescue animals, I'm not attacking you guys. But there's that level where, you sort of go, maybe there's something else going on besides you love to help pitiful little animals. Maybe you got some issues. That's another one. Fear of flying could be. She says, "Get over it, lady." But there may be an issue in the home, so one has to recognize that some people are uncomfortable with other people's homes. To be totally honest, my mother was not very comfortable in my home. Even though I only lived like 30 minutes away from my mother for many years with my children. I raised my children, and she never really wanted to come over. My father came over all the time, and he'd help out. He'd bring candies for the kids, and he'd do work around the house, and then take us out to lunch. I mean, my father was always there. My mother, not so much. But my mother went all the way to New York State, 8 hours away, driving to stay with my sister. She stayed there for days, for a week. She'd do art shows, and so she would stay with my sister. And I remember thinking, why would she go all the way up there and stay with my sister, but she won't come over here for just a few hours? And one day, she did come over with my father. I think he forced her into it. But anyway, she came over. Now, mind you, I did see her at her house. So we would go to her condo, and she'd have dinner for us, and she adored my children. It wasn't an issue. When she was in my house, I could see she was not really comfortable. She and my sister had very similar houses and very similar lifestyles. Mine was a little weird for her. She'd go over there, and the furniture was similar. The food was similar. There were no pets at the time. She comes to my house. I lived in a 250-year-old house. We had value furniture from the thrift store. We had cats and a pig, a big, huge pig, 300-pound pot-bellied pig. We had lizards. I cooked weird food, in her opinion, because I like, my ex was Jamaican, and I cooked spicy stuff, and he did. And I just think when she came, she was like, I love the kids, but... And it took me a while to realize it wasn't personal. She just wasn't comfortable there. So sometimes we have to look at our own selves and say, is that the problem? So here's a woman who's got at least 8 animals in the house. And she's rescuing them. Now, rescue dogs, I'm going to say this right here. You rescue dogs. Some of them do not have good temperaments, and I don't know what she's rescuing. So these parents may have been scared to let their girls go there because they're afraid their children might be attacked by a emotionally disturbed pit bull, for example. Sorry, pit bull people who love your pit bulls, but those animals do. But, you take something that has been abandoned and abused, you put it in your house. You want to risk your life over it. That's fine. You're a good person. But put your 2 granddaughters in there to be maybe possibly attacked by a dog that has issues. I can see where the parents might be reluctant. So she doesn't. So anyway, then she goes on to say how, she couldn't possibly go because she'd have to pay for airfare, parking, and a pet sitter. I'd need a family member to pick me up and usher me around. I responded if they wanted to pick up the tab, I would be happy to visit. Okay, they're raising kids. I don't know that they have money for the tab, So then she's saying, what do I do about this? Okay, she wants to cut them out of her will and out of the insurance stuff. So I'm going to say they're probably like, good, see ya. But, this is interesting to look at the way people don't see their own part in things. Here's another example. Dear Abby, I've been married 30 years to a man who is a good person in every way except one. He lies to me. It's mostly about inconsequential things. Okay, if a guy will lie to you about little things, he's been lying to you about huge things, and you just turning a blind eye. It's mostly, okay, but over the past 6 months, his lies or omissions have rocked the foundations of our marriage. Why would that be? He does it typically to cover up behavior he's ashamed of. What kind of behavior that he's ashamed of? What? That he didn't take the trash out at 9 o'clock like he told you he would? Or that he does other stuff? He has promised to be more truthful and transparent, but recently I caught him lying about something I saw with my own eyes. So she sees him doing it. He's like, I'm not doing it. When I called him on it, he admitted the truth. Oh, he did admit it finally. Each time he swears he will do better. Is he a pathological liar? You think? I mean, do you know how to go on Google and write pathological liar definition? Your husband. I feel like I'm at the end of my rope, and I hate to throw away 30 years of marriage. I'm going to say your 30 years of marriage was a big fat lie. And maybe more if it's something that can be addressed. How are you going to address a pathological liar, which probably means he's a psychopath? How can you address the fact that you've ignored something for 30 years and lived with hundreds and hundreds of lies? And so, yes, your whole marriage is a lie because your husband is a liar. So there you go. This was Abby, so she writes back, it appears the man you're married to is a compulsive liar. Yeah, it is. By now, it must be clear to both of you that unless he's willing to work out his inability to tell the truth and seek help, he's not going to get help. He's not going to want help because he's a psychopath. If you're serious about throwing 30 years away of marriage, offer him that option of going to a therapist before you consult a lawyer. I'm going to say, lady, if you're lucky, you can get the hell out of the house in one piece. Be sure he doesn't have insurance policy on you, because he might have lied about that too. No, honey, I didn't take out $1 million insurance policy on you. But let's go take a drive by a volcano. Oh my goodness, Steve. Somebody wants to. Robin said, "What happened to your pig, Pat?" Actually, if you go and you put into the internet, into YouTube, profiler Pat Brown, pet pig, you will see the whole saga of my pet pig. She lived for 20 years until my crazy renter, who, my crazy ex-renter, ratted me out to the authorities, claiming I had a pig illegally on the property, and they told me I had to get rid of my pig after 2 decades. And I started a Facebook page, and the National Enquirer started because I'd done stuff for them. They started a whole thing to save Gwendolyn the pig, and I got massive amount of coupons and love from everyone all over the nation to save Gwendolyn, and she died before we went to appeal. But she got a great sending away party because my crazy renter trying to hurt me actually gave me this wonderful opportunity to have. The media came in, they did great videos, which you'll see on YouTube. And the Washington Post came in. I have a gorgeous picture of me hugging my piggy. So she got a great send-off party for her very long life. She was a wonderful part of our family. So, yeah. But I understand some people didn't want to come to my house because it was a very large pig. And my sister, if you're listening, she said, you didn't mention this. My sister did not like my piggy. She did not. And so when she came to my house, she used to try to grab. One time, there was a sausage in my refrigerator. I'm not sure why. I don't remember eating sausage. But anyway, there was a sausage in my refrigerator. And she remembered taking the sausage out of the refrigerator and holding it and sitting there trying to beat my pig off of her. Because Gwendolyn was just trying to be friendly. She was like, go away. She did not love my piggy. I'm sorry, you didn't get along. Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is she says his lies are about insignificant things. How can you trust anything he says or does? You can't. So it's just fascinating to see how people think and what the way they express. So especially when they've been buying things for a really, really long time. So it's just interesting. Let me show you that picture. Remember I showed you that picture by accident? The guy who fell in the volcano does not look like this. But this woman got really upset. She's like, good morning. Last week I was fortunate enough to go to my best friend's daughter's wedding, and I put a pic of myself. I got criticized and pulled to pieces. It wasn't nice. So I decided not to let the haters win and to retweet it. Well, I'm going to say, lady, the haters had it right, in my opinion. Now, I think that is an exceptionally fascinating, what do I want to say, a fascinating fashion moment. To go to a party, to go to the New Year's Eve party, to go to, express yourself party, to go to a 1920s. I don't know if they wore that in the 1920s, but a Southern party, any place. So, this would be cool as all get out. There's nothing wrong with the outfit. It's very vibrant. All right. And she's rocking it. All right, she's rocking it and proud of it. I don't have a problem with that in the world. But that has no business being at your best friend's daughter's wedding. She is the star of the day. She wants people to look at her in her beautiful, beautiful wedding dress, and you come in made up like that, walking in like you're walking into a Baptist church in Georgia, you know, strutting down the aisle. So everybody turns and goes, woo, woo. Oh, look at her today. You know, come on now. You obviously want attention. You strolled in there to take attention away from the bride, to get everybody to pay attention to you and to comment to you. Then you were so proud of it, you put it on the internet so everybody could praise you. You didn't get the praise you wanted. And you're like, how dare they? So now I'm going to throw it back in your face. Lady, you're a narcissist, a severe narcissist, because you don't care one crap about anybody else. You care about you. That's my opinion. I am not a psychologist, and I am not giving a professional opinion. I'm just saying that's what it looks like to me. So, that's a hell of an outfit. I tell you, it takes away from the ride. Right, it takes away. Yeah, it's fine, but not for a wedding. Absolutely. The headpiece, it's wild. It almost reminds me of those Hollywood things, you know, those big headpieces. I'm not complaining about the outfit. I'm complaining about the location and your choice to wear it to that location. That would, if that were my wedding, I won't punch you in the face. Maybe I'll have somebody escort you out. Go, you know, this is unacceptable. You know, it's called having a sense of understanding who the important person of the day is and what is appropriate in those occasions. You shouldn't wear that to a funeral either. If you're going to a very somber funeral, that would not be appropriate. If the person who died sent out a letter, and you know, before they died, they knew they were dying. They said, "Look, I don't want you showing up at my funeral dressed in black. I want you to come as gay and as gaudy as you can. You know, it's just this. I want you to rock this. I want to have a party. I want to see fireworks. Come in the craziest outfit and the most beautiful outfit you can come with. Then it would be great." I would have said to that lady, "Oh, that is fantastic." But you didn't do it in the right place, and you knew it wasn't the right place, and you did it anyway. And you're very proud of it, and you don't care one whit about your best friend's daughter's wedding. You care about how many people see you. And interesting, when she put that up and said, "Oh, you know, the haters, I'm putting this up for them." Do you know, almost 99% of the people then said, "Oh, no, I think it's just wonderful. Just ignore those haters." You see how we buy into that bull? Only a few people said, "Lady, you're still wrong. You're still wrong." So, Kentucky Derby attire. Yeah, Kentucky Derby would work. Yeah, not wedding of your friend's daughter. Absolutely. So, absolutely. She really did. Oh, you betcha she wanted some attention. Mm-hmm. She sure did. All right, now let me go to something I want to talk about. So I'm going to talk next about, I'm sure I got my which thing I want to talk about next, because I want to talk about these in an order, because I think these are important. All right, I want to talk about Marilyn Monroe. I want to talk about then Phoebe Prince and the bullying issue, and then Anneke Lucas. So we have a suicide by a Hollywood star. Then we have a teenager who's bullied, and then you have a woman who says that she was sold into the sex trade. What do these things, three things have in common? And you would probably think absolutely nothing. She's probably normally a pretty eccentric dresser. Yeah, she is. I mean, obviously, she had to make that. She had to make that outfit. You know, that was a lot. I don't know who put it together. It was a lot of work, but I applaud that outfit in another situation. The problem was that everybody should know what's right and wrong and when it's right and wrong. For example, let's say I'm going to, I don't know if you saw that recently. I forgot which star that it was, who wore this completely see-through top of her dress. And now she's all upset that people are calling her slutty. She said, they're all a bunch of haters. I'm like, okay, it was completely see-through, and you're in a public location. It was just inappropriate. And then she got mad because people thought her boobs weren't nice. Well, you know, they weren't the most exotic boobs I've ever seen. So, you know, if you're going to go slutty, at least have hot boobs. Okay, she didn't. Anyway, but, you know, if I'm going to go see some friends of mine who are very conservative, I'm going to put on a conservative outfit. And by the way, for example, my daughter and my granddaughter and I are going to Amish country in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Okay. And we're going to stay with an actual Amish family. It's through Airbnb. But this particular one, instead of having a separate house for the guests, they actually allow people to stay in their home. And it is a true old order Amish, and they have no electrical outlets in the home. So I was telling my granddaughter, well, we're not going to be able to plug anything in. So you can't, there's no internet there. There's no lights there at night. We're going to, they're going to have lanterns and things like that. And I said, we're going to go to an Amish household. I am going to make sure that we are all appropriately dressed. Obviously, we're not going to wear Amish clothing because they don't expect that. But I'm also not going to wear myself a see-through top into an Amish household. I'm going to make sure I'm covered relatively well and that we don't have our boobs hanging out in an Amish household. So we're not going there. We're going up here, And if we can't do that for a couple nights that we've chosen to stay in their home, there's something very wrong with us. Like we're severe narcissists that we don't give a crap about the people that we're going to visit. So I'm very, very cautious if I'm visiting a Muslim family and we're going someplace and everybody's got their head covered. I will carry a head covering and I will cover, because I'm with them. I'm at someplace else. I'm in Hawaii. I'll wear a sundress, totally different. But I'm respectful of the cultures I'm with and with the people I'm with and with the event I'm going to. And that's what everybody should be. But high level narcissists, they only care about they only care about getting attention. So, they will skirt those social rules and do whatever they damn well please. So what really? She's my seventh cousin. Is that so many degrees of separation? Okay. So I'm going to go there first with Marilyn Monroe, just because I was asked if I would ever do a show on Marilyn Monroe. And here she is, and she is so pretty. She's a beautiful woman, and I really like some of her movies. I think she was very talented and charming. I liked her. I really, really like Marilyn Monroe. And I was thinking of doing a whole show on this, and then I started reading just Wikipedia page and thinking, oh my God, I think I'm going to cancel that thought. So why am I going to cancel that thought? I'll tell you why. All right, so let me find the basic Wikipedia thing on her. Where'd she go? Okay. Is that it? Where? Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. I had it open here. Okay, death of Marilyn Monroe. Okay. Now, let me just tell you the basic in case you don't know anything about Marilyn Monroe. All right. Marilyn Monroe died at age 36 of a barbiturate overdose late in the evening of Saturday, August the 4th, 1962, at her home in Los Angeles, California. Her body was discovered before dawn on Sunday. She was one of the most popular Hollywood stars during the 50s and 60s, a major sex symbol of the time. She had grossed over $200 million by the time of her death. That's a heck of a lot. By the way, she supposedly was found, according to the New York Mirror, found nude in bed, hand on phone, took 40 pills. I don't know if that's true because that's a tabloid. Monroe had suffered from, now here's the point I want to point out right away. Monroe had suffered from mental illness and substance abuse for several years prior to her death. Now, I don't know how many times I've seen something where, wait a minute. I'm going to stop right here. I got to pull something else up because I just read this. And I want to talk about this because we're talking about mental health and how it affects when you're looking at crimes, whether things are true or not true. All right. There is another girl. I didn't plan to do this, but I want to show. She's a very pretty girl. This is Stacey English. Stacey English. All right. This is called Accident or Murder: The Suspicious Death of Stacey English. Was this really a crazy accident? That's what they're claiming. In 2012, the death of Stacey English in Atlanta left her family with question marks. Officially, she died in an accident, but her parents aren't convinced. And I'm telling you, this happens all the time. Parents are rarely convinced that somebody was an accident or they overdosed or they committed suicide. They just can't believe that would happen. So they always think it's murder. Okay, so she grew up. She went to a private university, Hampton University. She lived in a condo in Atlanta's Buckhead district, known for its exquisite architecture. Family and friends describe Stacey as a smart, vibrant, outgoing, and well-liked person that would help anyone in need. And I don't doubt this for a minute. Okay. In the years leading up to her death, she worked at the Hampton Alumni Atlanta chapter at the Hampton University as a mentor. Sounds good again, right? But just like anyone knows, everything was not always great. In 2008, Stacy was reportedly brought to the hospital after she attempted to kill herself. Bingo. There you go. So now we have a tragic accident, supposedly, where she died. And you start out thinking, what? This is a perfectly healthy human being, mentally healthy human being. And why would she end up dead? Well, now we see it here. She attempted suicide. After that, she took medication to treat a medical condition about which no details are disclosed to the public. I don't know what medical condition is. Maybe it could have been schizophrenia. It could have been severe depression. It could have been who knows what. So then they had Christmas. She had Christmas with her family. She was 36 years old. A few days later, she suddenly disappeared. And that was the last time they'd seen her alive. One day later, she had an acquaintance over at her apartment. The guest, Robert Kirk, would later tell police that Stacy began to show peculiar behavior. Maybe that guy killed her, right? Because he's just lying about this. No. He said she talked about the end of the world. Another friend, and here's what's important, another friend of hers, Michelle Struthers, reported similar behavior, and that Stacy felt like somebody wanted to do her bad. She's paranoid. She's in a psychotic state. So not only this guy, but another friend, a girlfriend of hers. So now you have two people. She's got a suicide attempt and two people who say she's acting loony, something's wrong with her mental state. This was the last time anybody saw her because she asked to be left alone after those incidents. When the family didn't receive any sign of life, they went to check. They found her nothing at the apartment. And aside from her being missing, so was her car. Then they found her car. It was still in Atlanta. Although the car was abandoned, the engine was still running. But then a month went by, they didn't find her. January 23rd, 2012, the decomposing corpse of a woman was found in a wooded area in southeast Atlanta. It was her. A body was found under a tree, which was only a mile away from where the car had been found. The cause of death was hypothermia, complicating underlying neurological and psychological disorders, and they closed the investigation. Officially, it's closed, and the family's going, I think she was murdered. And that's what I see over and over again, that if you look backwards, there's always something there that is very concerning that the person is dealing with. So I'm going to use myself as an example. Why not? Okay. I have no psychiatric history. This is true. You can't find one. Okay. I don't have a psychiatric history. I've never been severely depressed. I've been depressed. Like I hated the darn shutdown for, coronavirus. That depressed the heck out of me, but not to the point where I thought of killing myself. I've never threatened suicide in my life. I'm not a drug user. So people aren't going to, if I end up dead someplace, just to know, you aren't going to find a history of mental issues. I haven't been psychotic. I haven't had schizophrenia. I haven't had drug overdoses. I haven't tried to kill myself. I don't have cutting. I don't have any of these things. Okay. Could I have killed myself? Yes, it's possible. People do sometimes get severely depressed in a short period of time. I could be hiding things that, y'all don't know about because I'm on YouTube. My family didn't know about. I mean, I'm just secretly hiding things. Things are piling up. I'm getting depressed. And finally one day I'm like, screw it. And I take out my 9mm and go, okay. Could that happen? It could. But an awful lot of times when somebody's found dead and everybody claims there's no way they would have killed themselves, you'll find this huge history. Marilyn Monroe, what do we find? We find a history. She has a history of mental illness and substance abuse. She had not completed a film since The Misfits, released in 1961, and that was a box office disappointment. She spent 1961 preoccupied with various health problems, and then she began to film Something's Gotta Give, but the studio fired her in June. They blamed her for the production's problems, and then the weeks preceding her death, Monroe attempted to repair her public image by giving several interviews. She began negotiations on Fox to be rehired. She spent the last day at her home, and then she locked herself in her bedroom, and they had to get in by breaking a window, which is also important because she locked herself in. They believed it was a suicide because she had been overdosed before. She was prone to mood swings and suicidal ideations. No evidence of foul play was there. And they thought an accidental overdose was ruled out because of the large amount of barbiturates she ingested. So probably not just an overdose. Probably she's just got, I'm done type of thing. So anyway, since then, there have been many, many, many theories about her, that she was actually murdered. The theories involve John Kennedy, his brother Robert, Jimmy Hoffa, mob boss Sam Gansana. And then I started looking at the conspiracy theories, and holy crap, by the time I got finished with looking at the 700 conspiracy theories and how many books have been written about who killed her. I mean, there's like dozen books written about who killed her, and every one of them is, that did land on my head, that fly. There's so many books, and every one of them has a massive different theory about why they would kill her. All right, I'm going to say this. She was just an actress. Stop exaggerating. She's just an actress. Okay, so I don't know who she had affairs with. I don't know if she had an affair with Kennedy. Oh, who cares? It's not that big a deal, quite frankly. Did she know all these things, all these secrets? I doubt it. She's an actress. She wasn't a nuclear scientist. She wasn't involved in spying. She's just an actress. She's in Hollywood. She sees people all the time. She runs around and smiles in front of the camera and hugs people, and that goes on constantly. She sleeps with lots of people, probably over the history of her lifetime in Hollywood, because that's Hollywood. It's sad but true. Lots of sex going on there, lots of casting couch going on there. And let me point out something more important, and which is going to, again, have to do with a lot of these cases where things happen and we don't understand why they happen. Two things happen when you get involved in Hollywood, in television, and movies. One is that a lot of times people who are into acting in television and movies have narcissism problems. They do, because they want to get that attention. They need the attention. They drink the attention. And if the attention stops, they start losing it. They get very, very upset because they need that. They need to feed on that kind of thing to know they're okay, to feel they're okay. They don't have that strength in themselves. They want other people to tell them they're okay and great. So it's very tough for people who have troubles with that, being very narcissistic, to continue, unless they're always successful every moment of the day. So you'll see an awful lot of actresses and actors kill themselves. And you wonder, what the heck? They were rich, famous, what the heck? So one of the reasons is because if there's a dip someplace, they can't handle it. Okay, they can't handle as their fame grows. You have to understand, if fame grows, it's like an addiction. That you start out with a little bit, and then you get more, and then you get more, and you get more, and now you're addicted to a very high level of fame. And then one day, your fame drops. You can't get work. You're fired. Whatever happens to you, and that's like somebody just took away your heroin. So you go insane because you've got to have it back. You got to have it back, and you can't go down to the corner and buy it if you're in Hollywood. You got to somehow get somebody to give you another movie. And she was trying to do interviews. You see, she was running around trying to do interviews because you had to get people to pay attention to her. Now, not everybody is a narcissist who's in Hollywood, so I'm not trying to say everybody is, and not everybody on TV is a narcissist. But then, even if you're not a narcissist, you can get surprised by the amount of attention you get, and it can feel good, So suddenly, from being a regular person, and Marilyn Monroe was once a regular person, right? Somebody found her and brought her and said, they found her, and she became a star. So she came from a small town and was just a pretty girl, local pretty girl. And now she's in Hollywood, and it's a huge change of life. And all of a sudden, things start coming in. People start paying attention to you. You start showing up on televisions and in the movies, and the limos come and pick you up. And if you're really super popular, you get to hang with all the super popular people, all the cream of the crop, So suddenly you're so somebody. I mean, for myself, I was a homemaker and a medical sign language interpreter before I became a criminal profiler. And once I became a criminal profiler, I very quickly got found by television. It's kind of a luck thing, but anyway, just they needed somebody desperately one day. They came on my website. They asked me to come in. I did a show for the first time in my life. They loved me, and that was history. And from that on, I did 3,000 more television appearances at least. So suddenly, I'm a homeschooling mom, sign language, working on my, developing my criminal profiling agency, and suddenly, boom, overnight, I'm on television and people paying attention to what I say. They told me they loved me, and then all the networks started calling me. So then I started on MSNBC, and the next day I was on CNN, and then Fox, and then I ended up on the Today Show, and then the Montel Williams Show. And it was a huge change. And it was, I can't say it wasn't exciting. I can't be a liar. It's like, that's pretty cool. I remember going to Montel. I remember flying in, and I was with my daughter, and she wanted to come with me. And the limo comes and takes you to your hotel, and then in the morning the limo comes back and takes you to the studio, and everybody goes, ah, and you get your hair and makeup done, and then I walk onto the stage with Montel, and my daughter's in the audience. It's the beginning of my career. It's big. It's a hell of a rush, and luckily I have a pretty even head on my shoulders, so I was very realistic. First of all, I really wanted to do something with criminal profiling. I'm more interested in, see, getting the flies off of my head. I was more interested in the methodologies and changing and improving the methodologies over my lifetime, which I'm still working on. So I had at least a very realistic viewpoint of things. And I always said, I'm never going to say anything I don't believe is true. So I probably won't be on TV, next month. And oddly, I did say what I thought, and I still was on TV. So go figure that. I don't have any clue why that worked out that way. They thought I was kind of interesting, I guess, and edgy or something. It wasn't my plan. But I quit one day. One day I said, I've had it with the way the television people are generally speaking doing things. I don't like it. And I walked away. And you wake up in the next morning and it's weird. It's weird. You're suddenly not on television all the time anymore. You're like, wow, you go to the store and you buy your groceries, play with your cat, which mine is now dead. So anyway, I can't play with him. But anyway, in case you don't know, my cat died last week. Anyway, so that's Ziggy. Ziggy is no longer with me. Yeah. So it's very quiet around here. So anyway, so it's very hard even for a healthy person, a mentally healthy person who gets into these situations where they're suddenly getting a lot of attention in television and in film and all that, to handle the amount of media, to handle the and also the mean stuff. Because when you get all the good stuff, oh, you're so wonderful, and you get to do all the cool things, go to the parties, blah, blah, blah. You also got the mean stuff. You sucked in your movie. You were terrible. You can't act your way out of a paper bag. Somebody told me I couldn't profile shit in a paper bag. So, I get tons of nasty stuff. I'm called an old bag, so, you have to be also able to handle all the ridicule, all the cruelty that will be thrown at you because you're in the limelight. So you have to deal with that too. And you have to deal with the ups and downs, and you have to deal with people wanting to be your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, and they all really want is to be in the light with you. And they don't even love you. They're just using you. So it's a complicated life. Very, very exhausting. So even if you're mentally healthy and stable, it's not easy. So if you have problems, and even if you're mentally stable in the beginning, that may lead you eventually into becoming mentally unstable and getting into drugs to tone, just be able to get through all of this, to have the energy to go to work. You take amphetamines to deal with the nastiness. You take barbiturates. The hours are ridiculous. I mean, it's a rough life. It's a glorious life. It's also rough and very difficult. And that Marilyn Monroe, at 36 years old, her career was not in a good place. She had just been fired. Things weren't going well. She already had mental problems. She already had drug problems. I think she just killed herself. I think she just said, I can't take it anymore. I'm just done. I've gotten to the top, and I think it's downhill all the way. I'm just done. So no, I'm not going to do a whole show on Marilyn Monroe and go through every theory out there, because I just think that she was a beautiful woman. She was a very good actress. I think she seemed lovely to me, and I think she just got overwhelmed and couldn't deal with it anymore. That's what I think. So that's my comment on Marilyn Monroe, and then I'll be going on to Phoebe and the bullying issues. Yeah. Oh yes, and yes, Ziggy is no longer here. No. I mean, I knew he wasn't doing well. He was getting thinner and thinner by the day. But he did spend his last month pretty much sleeping. He was always on top of me. He was always like sitting on my leg, just always on top of me. And I had him, I spent a lot of time with him because I knew he was getting thinner and thinner. So I figured he was an elderly cat. So, I thought I should spend that extra time, and I did. And then he just, I got up one morning and called for him, and he didn't come in the house, and I found him outside. So, yeah, that is Ziggy. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's, yeah. Let's see what's there. Joe said, she was the first Playboy centerfold too. Was she really? I did not know that. I don't know that much about, Marilyn Monroe's whole history. I'm sure she did favors for Hef before he was a senile, incompetent old perv. that may be well true. I mean, I've been in Hollywood. I spent a year out there, and it's rough. I mean, it's and the competition is horrendous. And the same thing is true of television. I mean, if you can be famous one day and you're just dirt the next. So it's a toughie. It's a really toughie. I'm glad you think so. That was just that's really off the top of my head mostly because I wasn't planning to do it, but when I started looking into it, I just thought, I feel just so sad for her. And then I think, how many people have made a ton of money with these conspiracy theories about her death? And this is where the money lies for people. They're like, if I can come up with something, I can spin something, I'm going to sell millions of books. Doesn't matter whether it's true. Doesn't matter if I'm being fair to Marilyn and her whole, whatever. It's just sad. I mean, it's just, I'm holding my cat close. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, at least. I mean, I said I've been there. I've been in. So I was a failure in Hollywood. So I spent a year there, and I refused to do the casting couch, and I did a lot of extra work and made shitty money, and I spent a year trying to get somewhere as a model and an actress, and I was pretty enough, but I wasn't very talented. So. I would have been much more talented in the bed than I would have been on the film. So, but I wouldn't do it because I made that promise to myself, and I gave up after a year and said, and then I ended up on television years later, which is kind of funny because speaking of cats, people have asked me about this scar on my face. You see, it's a scar on my face right here. And that's what ended my modeling career. So I was trying to do some modeling stuff. And then when I was in Denmark, that's, Benny's land there. I picked up a cat, and it was a stray cat in the dorm, and I picked it up and I fed it, and then I put it in my lap, and I turned around and went, ripped my face open, and I ended up having to have surgery to I have a scar here, but it was like really big, and they had to pull it all together. I had another one. I had like another one here. Anyway, that kind of killed my modeling career, and I thought, well, I'll never be in films or on television again. And then years later, when I was in my 40s, I was halfway through my 40s when I ended up on television, and I'm like, so I was a hot 19-year-old and couldn't make it. Now I'm a 40-year-old with a 40s in my 40s with a scar on my face. Go figure. So But Hollywood and TV is a rough place. It really is. It's a rough place. So I feel, you just saw them? Oh, I just looked up your videos of Gwendolyn. She is so cute. Oh, thank you. I love my Gwendolyn. I miss my Gwendolyn. I remember you posted your pics. You look better than Sharon Tate. Well, I've ended up better than Sharon Tate too. No. I don't know if I look better, but yeah, I was a pretty hot little 19-year-old, I think. Yeah, had good legs, So, but it was really. I hated being out there. I didn't like anything that was going on. There were moments of excitement when I was on the set, seeing famous people, and thinking, oh my God, I'm in a movie. And usually my part got cut out someplace. I never hardly saw any of myself. There were like a couple movies where I could actually see myself, and the rest of the time I couldn't. But yeah, so, it was an interesting experience, and luckily I didn't fall for the casting couch, but I didn't also, if I maybe had gone to the casting couch, I might've become an actress, you know what I mean? I just didn't. I did go to a Playboy club once, and I do remember that. And I got a tryout, and I put that outfit on, and let me tell you, that corset around the middle, man, I've never looked so good in my life. That thing like sucks your middle, and like, whoa, I was like, whoa. Yeah. I didn't work there, only because they closed the club down the next week. I don't know, maybe they were into something else. So that was my experience in Hollywood. But anyway, so now let's get to a sad situation about bullying. But this is a story which I don't think has been properly dealt with, because except for oddly, I think it was the Daily Beast who actually had more honesty about this whole situation as to what happened to this poor girl. All right, this girl's name this is let me bring her up here. Phoebe, where are you? Oh, Phoebe. All right, let me read you the basics on Phoebe Prince. Her name is Phoebe Prince. She was only 15, I believe, when she died. All right. Suicide of Phoebe Nora Mary Prince on January 14th, 2010 led to the criminal prosecution of 6 teenagers for charges including civil rights violations, as well as to the enactment of stricter anti-bullying legislation by the Massachusetts state legislature. She had moved from Ireland to South Hadley in the U.S. state of Massachusetts. Her suicide after suffering months of bullying from school classmates brought international attention to the problem of bullying in American schools. And then they did this legislation. All right. This is the Wikipedia version. But I think it's interesting because they left out a lot in this. Because sometimes Wikipedia, I find very useful, even if I don't necessarily believe everything. And there is sometimes a slant, but they do sometimes just have a lot of basic facts, so it's simply useful. But they say here, the bullying incidents and the suicide. Having recently moved to the U.S. from Ireland, Prince was taunted and bullied for several weeks by at least 2 groups of students at South Hadley High School, following disputes with 2 girls in late December. Her aunt reportedly warned school officials in August 2009, prior to Prince's enrollment at the school, to watch after Prince, as she was susceptible, this is in the article, susceptible to problems including peer pressure and bullying. Investigations later found that Prince was in fact one of 4 girls bullying. Oh, they did put this in here, so this is good. Investigations later found out that Prince was in fact one of 4 girls that bullied a student in Ireland. She was the bully, not the bullied. She was the bully in Ireland over a relationship with a boy. After the victim of that bullying was moved to another school by her parents, Prince wrote a letter of apology, which was praised by the victim's mother, who blamed the bullying on peer pressure and a lack of action by school authorities. So now she moves to America. January 14th, 2010, 3 of the accused allegedly engaged in persistent taunting and harassment of Prince in school, in the library, and in the school auditorium. One of the accused allegedly followed Prince home from school in a friend's car and threw an empty energy drink can at her. That person was actually charged with assault with a deadly weapon. It was an empty drink can. That's a bit of an overcharge. And yelled an insult. It was after this final incident that Prince died by suicide by hanging herself in the stairwell leading to the 2nd floor of the family apartment. The body was discovered by her 12-year-old sister. And then there was a memorial page, and her body was buried in Ireland. All right, so after this happened, there was a huge reaction, and parents brought up that bullying was being ignored by the school administration. The Massachusetts state lawmakers sped up the efforts to have anti-bullying legislation, and they proposed something called Phoebe's Law. And then they had a criminal case where 6 of them were charged. The 2 male teenagers were charged with actually also with I think they were charged with statutory rape, because I think they were just 18 and she was 15 and they had sex with her. So statutory rape. And also for violation of civil rights, criminal harassment, disturbance of a school assembly, and stalking. So I think that's an excessive use of stalking, because basically he followed somebody to yell at them. It's not the same thing as stalking. I mean, it's not nice, but it's not quite stalking. So anyway, there was a interesting overreach, I believe, in the charges, and eventually what happened with them. I'm trying to see. All 6 defendants did not appear in court on the arraignment. They were told to stay away from the family. The female minors were arraigned as youthful offenders on the adult felony charges. I'm not quite sure. They got community service mostly. 5 of the defendants were placed on probation. Several were sentenced to community service. The charges against a male student was dropped completely at the request of the Prince family. Okay, so lots of bad behavior. Okay, lots of bad behavior. And I want to mention the bad behavior issue and school to start with. Because everything happens within the school, and this is where the ground of where everything starts happening now, and also on Facebook. and on other social media sites. And also, in my opinion, with the home. And this is something that is a lot ignored about the home. And remember when I talked about a lot of times there's mental illness and suicidal ideation far before the actual thing that happens that gets everybody's attention. And a lot of times that is ignored because they have an agenda. In this case, it's an anti-bullying agenda, which is perfectly, I don't have a problem with an anti-bullying agenda. I think that's a good thing. But a lot of times it's based on things that aren't even true and accurate. Now, just to mention the school issue for a second. I was not a happy high schooler. Okay. I probably would have been considered bullied back in the day. I lived in McLean, Virginia. McLean, Virginia was the high school there was considered I think one of the top or the top public high school in the country. Lots of wealthy children went to it because we all lived near the Kennedys because it was McLean, Virginia. And so when we moved there, my mother being a New Englander, she made all our clothes. We didn't shop at Eleanor's Villager shop, which is where you got your Villager dresses. If you're as old as me, you'll know what they are. They're these dresses, and they got these little pleats. You got like it's like I'm losing my clothes again. You got these pleats, and they go like this. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, this way. You got there's like 10 pleats on this side, and there's like 10 little pleats on this side, and they come down here, and then you have buttons down the middle. It's like a shirtwaist dress. Well, they're kind of expensive, and even if they weren't, my mother made my dresses. So because she was so kind to me, she decided to make me one of those Villager dresses, but she only put 5 pleats per side and like not 10 or 12 or whatever those. They were little teeny pleats, but my mother's pleats were more obvious that they were like 5 per side. And I remember being in school, walking down the hall and having people laugh at me and point and saying, "Your mother made that for you because that's not a real Villager dress." And I remember thinking, screw you. My mother was nice enough to make me this dress, and I'm damn well going to wear it. That's what I thought. But I wasn't popular. I never was. Just never was. I was one of the outcasts, one of the untouchables, in school. I ran a floating poker game. I remember that. That was my big thrill in high school. I wasn't in any clubs because nobody would have me. Maybe I should do the Groucho thing and say I don't want to be in one of the clubs that would. And I hated high school, and I graduated 1 year early just to get the hell out of there. Just wasn't my thing, and I wasn't popular because I just didn't have the, social skills or whatever that we're supposed to have. And yeah, I got teased occasionally, and people pointed at me occasionally, and I didn't sit at the popular table. I sat at the weirdo table. That's life, it sucked. I mean, I'd rather not have gone there. My friend went to Scotland, and I wanted to go to the school. I wanted to go to the girls' school she was going to in Scotland. And I asked my parents to send me to Scotland to the girls' school. And they just didn't want to spend the money, I don't think. Maybe they just thought it was not going to be a good student, and they didn't want to waste their money. I don't know, now that I've been a parent, I'm like, maybe they had a good reason not to send me, but I wasn't a happy teenager. I wasn't a suicidal teenager. I didn't have mental issues. I just wasn't super popular. I did have a few friends, and I had my pets, and then I got the hell out of there finally, and then went on my way, and then, went to college and did other things. And, but you could call that, I was bullied. I wasn't beaten. I was just people weren't overly sweet to me. And now we have Facebook and so on and so forth, where people can just spew and out things. If I weren't on television, and if I wasn't on YouTube, if I didn't have a Twitter account and a Facebook account and everything else that I have, I wouldn't get any hate. I would just have my friends, and my friends would be nice. So when you have a smaller circle of family and friends, you don't get that kind of thing, but you open yourself up to a large high school. And let's face it, some of these high schools are pretty big. My high school, I think it was 2,000 students or something like that. 2,000, 4,000? I don't know, it was big. It was a big high school. There's lots of people there, to pick on you. And so, you have more problems in a place where you're opening up yourself more to the public. So same thing, you on Facebook, you should only have your best friends on Facebook. That's a parental problem, and parents need to pay attention to what's going on. So if your child has got a little soft heart there, or she gets her ego easily bruised, and she's going to become depressed over what people say about her, she shouldn't be on every social media, and you don't have to let her, because that's your job as a parent, to not have her do that. Just like it's your job as a parent not to let your children go hang around with creepy people. When I raised my kids were all homeschooled because I didn't like my high school. I mean, I don't like any of the schools near me. I didn't want my kids in them. But I remember my kids would say something like, can we stay at so-and-so's house? I'm going, oh no, you cannot stay at their house. Why? Because their mommy has weird boyfriends and I don't know who those people are. And no, you're not going to stay there. They can come here. We have a family. And if they were willing to have their kids come here, let's do that. And they did. They came and stayed at my house overnight. So I had to make decisions for my children as to what they were going to be able to do, where I felt they were safe and their minds were safe along with their bodies. So the parents have something to do with these things. And Phoebe also got, she had us on Facebook and she was getting mean things done to her there. Well, it's because somebody let that happen. Parents have to be vigilant. They always had to be vigilant, and some parents aren't vigilant and the children suffer from it, but it doesn't mean that the parents don't have responsibility for the environment that their children are in. Now, also that their children aren't the cause of the problem. So let's say your kid comes home, he punched me in the eye. So, why did he punch you in the eye? Oh, well, what happened? Well, I called his mother a whore. Okay. Well, in that case, he deserved to be punched in the eye. Too bad. So you're the instigator. I'm not going to go yell at the other kid. You said that to him. Got punched in the eye. All right. So that is one of the problems. So actually, this is Slate. I thought it was a Beast thing, but okay. This is a Slate article. This is fascinating to me because now we hear some more about the background of what happened with Phoebe. All right. So let me go back here a second. Let me find a spot in here. All right. One of the reasons they got, some of the charges they got, by the way, defense lawyers, they argued that Phoebe's civil rights were violated because she was called an Irish slut, a denigration of her national origin. And because the bullying interfered with her right to an education. All right. First of all, there were a lot of Irish descendant people actually in that school. And there were people that actually, when they said this Irish slut thing, they said, oh, not like her. She's a great Irish girl. This is an Irish slut. So it wasn't so much that they were denigrating her for the country, that it was just that, kids do stuff. It's not right, but they do stuff. And did it interfere with their education? Well, if you can't go to school and feel comfortable, yes, it does interfere. Everything interferes with your education. What's happening at home interferes with your education. What happens in your neighborhood interferes with your education. What happens at school interferes with your education. And your own behavior can interfere with your education. So here is what is fascinating about this whole thing. All right. How did this all start? So this story is way deeper than they're letting you know. Phoebe Prince moved to South Hadley from a seaside hamlet. All right. Now, she came to South Hadley with her mother. Just her mother, not her daddy. Oh, why is that? Her mother was a secondary school teacher and her then 12-year-old sister. Phoebe's parents were separating. Now we get a problem. We have a child who is being taken away from her home country, taken away from her country, taken away from her home, and losing her daddy at the same time. All right. Her father, a writer who'd gone into advertising, stayed behind. All right. She had a very strong relationship with her father, and he apparently really coddled her and loved her and spent a great deal of time with her. Okay. And she was actually quite smart. Phoebe was very smart. She was actually went to school library to find Dante's Inferno for a school report. And she would, when the librarian apologized for having only an old, inaccessible translation, Phoebe said her father could help her because he knew Latin and some Italian. But, so she's smart. She came from a smart family. Parents were educators, okay? But when she wrote a book for English in October, she chose not this classic, but she wrote, this was her report, Cutting, Understanding and Overcoming Self-Mutilation. Think she's got a problem? I'd say she's got a problem. She studied, this was the name of the book she chose, Cutting and Understanding Overcoming Self-Mutilation by the lecturer and psychotherapist Stephen Levenkron. In her essay, she wrestled with a discussion of emotional pain in the book. From a personal point of view, I can see that Levenkron does truly understand this concept of self-mutilation and how it's not about suicide in most cases. It's about trying to transfer the pain from emotional to physical pain, which is a lot easier to deal with for most adolescents who most likely don't even understand what they're feeling. Phoebe's mother, Anne O'Brien, told the police that her daughter had started cutting herself in 2008. 2008. How old was she? Wait a minute, hold on a second. When did she die? She died when she was 15. Hold it. Okay, I lost my thing when she died. Okay, hold on. I lost that one. So she went, but the reason she started cutting, supposedly, now this is another interesting thing. When she was at a private Irish boarding school. Why was she in a boarding school? She was in Ireland. Her parents were in Ireland. Why was she in a boarding school? Now, I don't know if anybody is here from Ireland and can tell me what's going on here, that anybody in that, is it already in their hometown? Why would they send her to a private Irish boarding school? A close friend of Phoebe's in Ireland told the police that she and Phoebe had trouble with other girls because they were dating older boys. Okay. So she wasn't very old. She was a young, I don't know if she was 14 when she was at the Irish boarding school, but she's already dating older boys. So now we've got a young girl who's dating when she probably was inappropriately dating. And when she got to the US, she was doing the same thing. Boys that are 18 years old, that's why they got nailed for the rape, statutory rape. So she's a freshman having involvement with seniors or more. So a close friend said, Phoebe said she couldn't take the other girls at her every night. So the girls, she was acting in a way that got the other girls to be annoyed with her. All right. So it said here, she was the type of kid who would never fight back, yet she was doing attention-seeking stuff that was pissing everybody off that was around her. So she was instigating, because if you don't want to instigate, you don't do things that instigate. She was doing things that instigate and then making herself the victim of the reaction. And so she started cutting herself. When Phoebe's parents learned about the cutting, they pulled her out of boarding school. Now, the other question is, was she cutting herself because of the harassment, or was she cutting herself to get her parents to get her out of the boarding school and bring her home? Maybe she wanted to be with the daddy she loved so much, but they shoved her off to boarding school, and she didn't want to be there. So when they got her out of there, they enrolled her locally at Mary Immaculate Secondary School. So there was a local school she could go to where O'Brien taught. Okay, so her own mother taught there. There too, and there's a word, too. Phoebe had a falling out with a girl over a boy. I think Phoebe has a serious problem of needing attention from all these boys. She was sexually active, very young, and was constantly looking for attention from the older boys. Eventually, it got so bad that Phoebe went through 3 or 4 months where none of the girls would talk to her. So now she's the first school, the girls got pissed off at her. Now she's in another school, the girls got pissed off at her. Then she comes to the US and the girls get pissed off with her. Phoebe doesn't learn. Phoebe's own behaviors are constant through all of this. And it's a little odd to me that you can blame everybody else, but the same thing happens in 3 different schools. That I'm going to say it's more about you. So anyway, then she started, in February 2009, she started cutting herself again. And in May, she started taking Prozac. Yes. O'Brien told the police, one of the lawyers said, okay, sorry, this is a lawyer thing. All right. So then coming over now her parents are getting divorced. Mom takes her off to the US to a completely different culture. Phoebe got a new start. Kids liked her. Oh, that's interesting. She was really easy to make friends with, very sociable. Sounds good, doesn't it? Said a boy who was a 9th grader. She hung out with whoever she wanted to right away. She also thrived academically. I thought my old Phoebe was back, said her mom. She was talking and participating in writing. She was excited that in this country you could talk and express yourself in class. So it sounds good. But then what happens? All right. The narrative has emerged since that she was new to the school and popular with boys. A pack of jealous, predatory kids, the South Hadley 6, went after her en masse. But that's not the story. The police interviews tell. And it's not how many students I talk to see it. This is from this article. Even kids who are relieved that Phoebe's death has pushed the school to do more to prevent bullying don't recognize the storyline that took hold in the media. I'm upset and angry that bullying wasn't taken more seriously here before this, but she says, they've turned this into a Lifetime movie, and it's not what happened. What happened in the eyes of many is this. Phoebe got into separate conflicts with different kids. That doesn't excuse a kid's bad behavior in response to her actions. Of course not, but it's a response. So she was attracting guys away from other relationships. All right. So she started going after this guy named Sean Mulvihill, who was now 18, who gave her rides to school. He was drawn to her, he said, because they, she appealed to him because they could have conversations and talk about life. But Sean had previously dated 17-year-old Kayla. And so they were supposed to be getting back together, but now Phoebe was in the way. And then let's see what else happens here. Around the same time, O'Brien was letting Phoebe spend one night a week alone in their small apartment while she and the younger daughter went to another house, sister's house. And apparently she started having parties there because she's 15 years old and being left alone at home. And then mommy finds out that they were using alcohol and smoking pot, and Phoebe said, yes, I was smoking hash. Okay, all right then. Then the mom renewed Phoebe's prescription for Prozac and took her to, so your kid has emotional problems as a cutter and you leave her alone. I'm going to say bad parenting. So she renewed her prescription for Prozac and took her to be evaluated at the Cooley Dickinson Hospital, where a doctor prescribed Seroquel to treat mood disorders. A week later, Sean tried to break off his relationship with Phoebe, and they talked. And then when he broke off the relationship, she came into the living room and told her mother she'd taken the whole bottle of Seroquel. And they drove her to the hospital, and she stayed there for a week. Counselors told the school that police said she'd gone into organ failure. So she also might have taken Tylenol on top of it. All right, so now, beginning of December, Sean, I'm kind of confused who these people, I guess they started dating again, okay? Exclusively. That was Kayla. Oh, that's the other girl. And then Phoebe came up to Kayla in school, and she told Kayla, I'd slept with your boyfriend. And Kayla hadn't known this. So she texted a breakup message to Sean. She said, actually thought, she didn't turn on Phoebe at that point. She thought it was actually kind of brave. She thought that Phoebe maybe thought she already knew, and she wanted to apologize, supposedly. Okay, sure. All right, Sean and Kayla got back together, but Sean was angry with Phoebe, thought she tried to derail his relationship, so he stopped talking to her. So then Phoebe hooked up with another 18-year-old, and they started hanging out. He said they didn't have sex, but she told her about all the problems. But the problem was that he had a girlfriend named Flannery, who was 17. And so now Flannery was pissed off that she was honing in on the boyfriend. So that made some comments on Facebook. So she wrote, haha, best night of my life she'd had with Flannery, with her boyfriend or something. Yeah, we kick it up with the true Irish, not the gross slutter poser ones. So in other words, she had Irish friends. So she was saying, hey, I like hanging out with the good Irish, not the slut Irish, So anyway, that was part of the reason they ended up being charged with bullying and all this kind of stuff. Of course, you got to see that to be bullied. So obviously, Phoebe saw these things on Facebook because she was paying attention. So then there's a bunch of other venting things that people are doing and so on and so forth. One girl told her to stay away from people's men, and they berated her for going after people's boyfriends. And then let's see. And then at some point she wanted to show this boy her cut, so she lifted up her hoodie and showed her cuts on her chest, above her bra, and all the way down to her hips. So she had some issues. Let me put it that way. And then it goes on and on and on and on. It's a long article. I'll link it below, the Slate article, so you can actually see what was going on. So I'm trying to figure out. Then she said, okay, so about 2 hours before she died, she texted the boy she sat with that day in the library. And she wrote, I can't do it anymore. I'm literally home crying. My scar on my chest is potentially permanent. My body's fucked up. what more do they want from me? And he wrote, hey, don't worry about it. I'll talk to them, make them stop being mean to you. And he wrote, who cares what other people think, Phoebe? I know you're a good person. And she went home and killed herself. Okay. She wasn't assaulted. Nobody beat her. Nobody actually told her to kill herself. They weren't super nice to her at a certain point, but that's because her behaviors were pissing people off. And she had mental problems. She had suicide problems. She had parental problems who were abandoned her leaving her in a boarding school. And then they were divorcing, and then they took her off to America. And then they leave her home alone for reasons I can't even understand when you got a suicidal kid. So, this wasn't just about bullying. This is about a whole bunch of people and Phoebe, the center of the problem was actually Phoebe, because it happened in 3 schools. So I don't know why she wasn't in constant therapy, why there wasn't a psychologist saying, hey, your behavior is just so inappropriate. That's why you're pissing people off. You're too young to date. You got to, get yourself some girlfriends. I mean friends, not friends who are, girls you want to have sex with, but stay away from the dudes. Stop honing in on other people's boyfriends and having sex with them. You're pissing everybody off. This is inappropriate behavior. But nobody actually said anything to her, apparently. And so she continued with inappropriate behavior, and she got a maybe appropriate response, because you're talking about teenagers. Teenagers aren't going to give you I'm just going to, I'm going to go see my own therapist about how I feel about the fact you just slept with my boyfriend. These are teenagers, and they're emotional. So you don't stir up hornets' nests over and over and over again unless you have a problem. And so I think Phoebe had a severe problem. Does that excuse bullying in schools? No. I personally am not fond of any large groups of same age people. I always think they turn into crappy people. Even in my community, like seniors, oh my God, they can do the same thing. I mean, they just get together, and then they don't like certain people. They're mean about them. People get mean. I like mixed ages, because I always find that people are are kinder to each other. My children grew up with a mixed age homeschooling groups. And so the older always had to take care of the younger and be nice to them. And everybody, people came from different backgrounds. And so everybody got along quite well. I don't remember any bullying going on there. And we wouldn't allow it because guess what? We were watching. The parents were there to say that's not acceptable behavior. I think the teachers are overwhelmed. I think that kids being, going through the halls the way they are, and the less and less and less we have rules and regulations to prevent just good behavior, and the more we allow kids to have private lives on the internet in large groups of swarms almost, the more problems we're going to have with fragile egos and people being nasty and mean to each other. And I think it's about time the parents stop allowing their children to spend all that time on the internet. Get your kids off the damn internet and don't have it be a part of their lives. If you're going to have kids on Facebook, they should only have their best friends. It's a lockdown Facebook page, and that can be done, and then you can have your little group of friends that you like, and you can chit chat with them and send them pictures and share times with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like sending letters back and forth in the old days. But allowing a free for all, that's a lot of parents and teachers, and the way we run schools. We allow. It's like running. I didn't send my kids to the local high school because I said, it's no different from the juvenile criminal institution down the street, and you haven't committed a crime. So why would I send you there? Because you shouldn't be in prison. But the kids over there were acting like, when I saw that school, it's like, holy God, you might as well be arrested and sent someplace, because that's the way people are behaving there. And I'm not letting you kids go there. I refuse to do it. So anyway. All right, so I haven't been able to see everything everybody's saying. Let's see. Christiane said, I don't mean to be a chat hog, but this child has BPD, in my opinion. Added to the other issues, it's no wonder she fell apart. Pat, I was wondering about the lack of counseling too. I don't see it any place. Personally, as far as school counselors go, I had a bad experience with school counselors. I remember my school counselor told me that I wouldn't amount to anything. So, what a thing to tell a kid. She thought I was a poor student, and I wouldn't amount to anything. I wouldn't be able to go to college. So I have a master's. Okay, so whatever. But Did you homeschool up to grade 12? Yeah, I homeschooled all the way through my 3 children. Yes, I did. In Prince George's County, Maryland, at the time, I couldn't bear what I saw. I took my daughter over to the local elementary school, and we sat there for a couple hours watching the classroom. That would be her first grade class. And when I was leaving, the teacher told me, take a right, go up there. That's the principal's office. You can register for the school. And I came out of the classroom and I took a left and I held my little girl's hand and I walked out into the parking lot and I said, they're never going to get you. They're never going to get you. And they never did. I homeschooled them. And it doesn't mean that there aren't good public schools out there. I couldn't afford private, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I didn't like what I saw. And by the time they got to high school, I really didn't like what I saw. So yeah, I just homeschooled them. So not everybody has that opportunity. I was fortunate. Not that I had a lot of money. I spent a lot of my life in thrift stores, buying cheap clothes, cheap furniture, cheap toys, cheap everything. But I don't regret it. I don't regret it for a minute. No, that wasn't a teacher. No, Martin, it was a school psychologist, and she wasn't doing that. She was trying to tell me that I should just not have very high hopes, that I should go get a job, doing something simple, because I wasn't college material. Yeah, I was bored in high school is what I was. I didn't get great grades because I was bored. Oh, you taught in PG for 2 years and you're still alive? That's a tough job. I wouldn't want to teach in PG. Oh my gosh, I just wouldn't want to do about that. Oh, Lord. Will you do a show about Conrad Ray? I am not sure. This is a good comment. Phoebe truly lacks boundaries. Yeah. But I think it's more I really think she needed a tremendous amount of attention. And she didn't know how to get it in a good way. And she's a pretty girl, so she didn't suffer from having an attractive look to her. It didn't appear to be overweight. So there was really nothing to bully her basicness about, something people could pick on. So she provided the material for people to bully her. And it doesn't mean that they should have done so. Bullying is still a wrong thing to do, but people say, oh, there you go, blaming the victim again. And it's not that I want to blame the victim, but I want people to understand what makes them become victims. And sometimes they do. I'm sorry, but sometimes they do encourage being victimized because their behavior does cause a problem. And we can't walk away from that. We can't. So, for example, if you're on Hollywood, right, and there's a casting couch, is the casting couch wrong? Absolutely. Should creepy people who do that maybe suffer some comeuppance? Yes, they should. Should it be stopped? Absolutely. However, there's one way to stop the casting couch, and that is to say no. And I said no for an entire year. Did I get any work? No. Didn't help my career any, but I had a choice. Now, there were girls I knew, and they went right straight for the casting couch. They were sleeping with a whole lot of dudes. Let me tell you, they were going to parties and sleeping with producers, going to parties and sleeping with actors, going into job interviews and sleeping with whoever interviewed them. Oh, come on, let's go out for lunch, dinner. And they end up in bed with the guy because they wanted to get the call back. They slept with everybody. Are they victims? Well, they are victims of the casting couch, but they also are people that promote the casting couch. Because if you do things, if you are one of those girls or guys, because guys are subject to that too. If everybody goes along with the program, it's kind of like if you've been raped and you don't report, then the next girl gets raped. You left the guy out there to do that. So in my opinion, you have a duty, a civic duty to report to stop the guy from raping the next girl. And even if you don't get justice, his name at least will be in a police report someplace. So if the next girl comes in and says, this guy raped me, let's say a year later, somebody in the next town over comes into the police and says, this guy did this to me, they're able to find out, oh my God, there was a report a year ago. We couldn't pursue because we couldn't get enough proof. But now there's another girl who doesn't even know the first one. And it was never in the media. And she's saying the same thing. You see, you're doing something to stop this guy. So if you go and you're willing to go to the casting couch, you are telling every other girl, well, you better do it too, because I've proven that this is the only way you're going to get work. And since I will sleep with them, well, why would they give you a job if I'll sleep with them? So you're contributing. So the problem is you have two sides of a coin. Maybe one side is worse, but that doesn't mean the other side didn't have some interesting problems. So, but what I'm seeing with a lot of certain things that are happening with bullying and suicides and when we see people end up in really sad conditions, a lot of times we only look to see who did it to them, and we don't look and see that there was a history of something that was already with them before that final day came. I think it's important to recognize, not so much on putting blame anyplace, but as a profiler, that's called victimology. You have to understand the victim as well to see what leads to something and to see how all these things play out. And as a matter of fact, I think some of those people that were accused were victims too. Those two boys that were, they got nailed into this thing. As far as I can see, they were nice to her. They did maybe have sex with her. At least one did. But they weren't even not nice to her. But they got swept up in this very aggressive prosecutorial thing for anti-bullying. And then the question is, at what point do you get accused of bullying because you said something not so nice to somebody? So somebody does something to you and you think they're horrible and you say, you're such a bitch. Should you be put in jail for saying that? It gets really questionable. You get in an argument, you throw a tin can. That's assault with a deadly weapon. I mean, some things are a little outrageous. So I think we have to be calm and unemotional to a great extent when we look at these things and say, okay, where do all the problems lie? Some of the problems did lie with Phoebe because she had the problems in 3 schools. And that's just a little weird to me. Some problems lie in the whole school system because of the way the whole thing's set up, which is why I didn't send my kids there. Some problems lie in our parenting of both the victim and the victimizers. Why? What are the parents teaching the victimizers to do? Allowing them to go on Facebook and be mean, or allowing them to go to school and be mean, allowing them too much freedom, whatever they're not teaching them proper morals and ethics at home. What kind of home life do they have? The bulliers. What kind of home life did Phoebe have? Not so good, in my opinion. Her mother was a teacher and she didn't even know enough not to leave a suicidal, depressed 15-year-old home alone. So there's lots of things to look at all the way around. I think it's just, a fascinating case and very sad. But so many things to look at. Oh, anyway, I got to read this way. Okay. Oh, lots of people enter into Faustian pacts. That's true. By rationalizing what's going on and kidding themselves that the rewards are worth it. That's true. We're back to Marilyn, the casting couch, and effects on mental health. Yeah. Most of the people who participate in the casting couch never actually get any work, but some of them do. And it's very similar, by the way. There's another casting couch out there. I point this all the time. It's called Match.com. And I only ever tried that once. And it was like so depressing because essentially every single guy wanted to sleep with me on the first date. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's the casting couch for Match.com. So what women do, apparently, a good portion of them do sleep with the guy on the first date because they want a second date. So they're hoping that if they sleep with this guy, he wants them to sleep with him, they sleep with him, and they that's their that's their hope that eventually they will be chosen for the role of girlfriend as opposed to the role in a movie. So they sleep with them, and what happens is the guy sleeps with 10 different women, and one of those women appeals to him more than the others after he's already slept with them, mind you. And he sleeps with her again. He sleeps with the other ones again too. But eventually he decides that this one is actually, he likes that one. So after 10 women sleep with him numerous times, maybe 20, maybe 30, one woman wins. She does get the role, you see, just like Hollywood. And I put out, when I tried this thing one time, I put out in my profile that I will not sleep with them unless I'm in a committed relationship. And I never got any dates. Similar to what happened in Hollywood, because I wouldn't go on a date with the guys the producers and stuff like that, and they would not hire me because they had 20 girls lined up at the door that were just as pretty as me, and they could grab them and sleep with them. And then one of those girls might just he might go, okay, I'll put you in a movie. So the problem is the casting couch, allowing yourself to be used and have sex in Hollywood does sometimes get you to win the golden ring. Same thing for Match.com. But the 95 to 99% of the people who participate, don't get anything except some diseases. So, and humiliation. But there is that one who does succeed. So therefore, there's always hope, you see. And that's why the casting couch and women sleeping with everybody on Match.com continues on. Because unless everybody stops and doesn't do it. Because remember the days when girls wouldn't sleep with a guy. So let's say you're going to high school and you don't sleep with the guys. And then the guys go, oh, she's, Now sex is becoming a thing you're supposed to do when you're even in high school. And I know when I went to high school, it was a no-no. I didn't know anybody who had sex with anybody in high school. We actually talked about, maybe when we go to college, would you do it in college? And I remember some girl going, oh, I'd do it in college. And the rest of us like, oh, you would? Oh. Because at that point in time, dating did not include sex. Dating included getting to know somebody, spending time with the girl, and eventually you would kiss. And I'm not saying it couldn't end up eventually in sex, because then people got carried away. But it wasn't expected that you went out on a date and had sex right away, or that if you were in a relationship for a week, you had sex. It wasn't expected, at least when I was there. So now that it is more expected, even girls in high school can't get a second date if they're not willing to be, more forthcoming with, a little bit of fun for the guy or the girl or whoever they're messing with. So it's unfortunate, but that is the way it goes. My high school counselor told me I should aim for an office job. I became a teacher despite her. Well, good for you. So unfortunately it works and people fall for it, because for somebody it means success. For the rest of the people, it just means you're just losers. So there's only one winner or two winners and the rest of them. So anyway, the last thing I want to talk about is the Anneke Lucas case. Now, Anneke Lucas is this woman, and this is here she is. There's I'll put the link below. I was a sex slave to Europe's elite at age 6. All right. She also has a book on the market. Self-pubbed, I do believe. It's very expensive. I tried to find a Kindle copy, but could not. It was like only $26 or something. I wasn't going to pay it. So anyway, she gives a very interesting story. And if you look at the responses on YouTube, there's nothing but praise of this woman. Absolutely 100% praise. And so when I was asked to take a look at this, I'm looking and saying, well, okay, is she telling the truth? Because this is my profile of mine is always going to go there first. A lot of people don't question, especially when you talk about child sex rings, especially when it comes down to the elite, the whole big thing where there's these huge pedophile rings and all the elite levels of government. It's such a popular topic. People are obsessed with it, and they sucker right into anybody who makes claims. Now, was she or was she not actually sold into sex slavery at 6 to the elites? Okay, so let me just read you a little about her basic story. And before I do that, let's see, which way am I going to do this? I'm going to get probably demonetized for this whole story. But anyway, where is it? Hold on a second. I got to find it. Here we go. All right. So her story is basically that she says, when I was a little girl in my native Belgium, I was put to work as a sex slave. All right. Here's what she says. Basically, I'm not going to do every part of this because some of it's very unpleasant. If it really happened to her, it's pretty horrifying. If it didn't happen to her, still don't. It's pretty horrifying anyway. My mother sold me and drove me wherever and whenever she got a call. The boss of this pedophile network was a Belgian cabinet minister. So we're talking about an actual pedophile network and a high level person. The clients were members of the elite. So she's not saying she's being, just trotted out to anybody. This is just, the top level of politics and business. I recognized people from television. Their faces were familiar to the masses while I was confronted with the dark side of their power addiction, the side no one would believe existed. I came across VIPs, European heads of states, and even a member of a royal family. Okay. Just to point out here, I'm going to point out some things along the way that I find questionably, well, maybe not credible, things that bother me. I'm just going to point out things that bother me as to whether this is true or not. Here's the first thing I found I had trouble with. That the clients were members of the elite, and she would recognize them from television. Now, first of all, she's 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. I don't think she knows who the hell the elite are. And I don't know that she would recognize from television, understand the whole process of who is truly elite, and that she would happen to see how much television is she watching, that she would be, and what kind of television is she watching, because she's a child. So theoretically, she should be watching children's type shows or movies and all that other kind of stuff. How many political shows is she watching? Is she watching the news all the time? What is she watching that these faces appear before her and she recognizes them immediately? I find that odd. Okay, let me go further. Around my 6th birthday in 1969, I was taken to an orgy for the first time in a castle. So now we're not just, in this case, we're not just being taken to just to somebody's house, to a castle, and a lot of the pedophile, shall we say, the stories that we hear, castles would add that exotic feature, you know what I mean, and of the royalty. I was used for an S&M show on a low stage, chained up with an iron dog collar and made to eat human feces. Afterward, lying there like a broken object, I felt so humiliated. I had to do something to save my soul or else. And this I knew for certain I would have withered and died. All right. So sorry about that grotesque thing. So not only is she just being sexually assaulted, there's an orgy, and apparently tons of people are assaulting her, and she's being made to do really awful stuff as if this is something truly that is a delight for the elite. The concept that somehow when people become elite, they want to torture little children, as that's kind of one of the tales going about. Now, another thing that bothers me right here, and she says, I knew I had to do something to save my soul or else. She's 6 years old. She's got this psychological epiphany. And by the way, she comes across, and when she does when she's talking to the public, she talks about the psychological impacts, and she's trying to help people psychologically withstand what they've gone through. But I don't know that you have an epiphany when you're 6 years old. I mean, that just seems a little extreme, that you would somehow develop this very adult way of dealing with a situation. So she says, I raised myself up and stood looking at the bizarre crowd of aristocrats dressed up as hippies, swaying to music and various levels of sexual interaction, busily availing themselves of little pills and pre-rolled joints passed around on silver trays by sober waiters. I trembled in fear, but my body straightened and stilled itself like a bow in suspense before the shot. And I heard my voice as though it were not my own, chiding the adults, telling them that this was wrong, and that I was going to tell on them, and that they would all go to jail. I doubt that. I've never seen children who are severely abused have that kind of ability to stand up in the middle of what's going on. Trippy, spacey music was oozing through the atmosphere, and most people were too high to notice me. One man wearing a business suit caught my eye. He looked scared, but he held my gaze for a brief moment and seemed to feel for me. Then he was gone. I never saw him again in the network, but years later, I did spot him on TV. He had become a prominent Belgian politician. She's got a hell of a memory. I was quietly led away and taken to a cellar. I was certain I was going to be killed. But instead, I was shown the fresh body of a young murder victim. I was to remain silent. So she does claim she saw children being murdered. So you're having the elite, royalty is there, and they enjoy watching children be killed. All right. I'm not quite buying that very much. Okay, then she goes, says, during the week I went to school. I was a shy girl with few friends. Now, I would say that if somebody's kid is having you go and be tortured and in orgies and be raped repeatedly, you don't send the kid back to school Monday morning, because something's going to show. There's going to be signs of bruising. There's going to be signs of some damage to the child. There's going to be really peculiar behaviors that are going to make the teachers go, what's wrong with this kid? We got to get some help for this child, right? But she goes back to school on Sunday morning, a shy girl with few friends. And she remembers, I remember once in the second grade becoming aware of an energetic shift in the room to realize all eyes were on me. The teacher had been calling on me, and I'd been too spaced out to hear. She wondered out loud if I knew the answer to the question she had asked, and I sat in an embarrassed silence while the class laughed. That's the worst memory you have going to school, and that's the most they notice about you, is that you were spaced out for a second, didn't answer a question. It's not working for me. I'm having issues here. I was a non-entity at school, and at home no one cared for me. I received more attention in the network. It felt good to be viewed as the most beautiful, perfect, sensual object by powerful men and high standards and taste. Wait a minute. Isn't this the exact opposite of what she just said? That she was being humiliated to the worst degree, and now suddenly she's having a good... Hold on one second. I'm hearing knocking at my door. Just a minute. I got to go answer that, or somebody's going to keep knocking. Doing a show, but what do you come here? Oh, that's pretty. I like the background of that. That is really cool. That is really pretty. My what? Your new favorite, huh? Wow, that's beautiful. I see. That's really cool. Okay. Yeah. Everybody look over here. Say hello to everybody. Hello. I guess I forgot to tell them I was doing a show at 3:00 today. That was my granddaughter. She was coming here with she was showing me her new painting. So she's been doing acrylics and oils. So she was showing me her beautiful tree that she had just done. So anyway, no, she's not an unhappy 8-year-old. So anyway, sorry about that. Let me stop here for a second and look at your comments. It says here, I want to look at some of these comments. Is some of this stuff QAnon? I don't know. I mean, that's obviously one group that has spread a lot of things. And I'm going to point out where there's some connections to truly some people who did have a ring where they were doing some sexual assaults on children. I'm going to point that out. And it was Belgian businessman, and it's a famous case in Belgium. So I'm going to point that out in a minute so you can see what it means, like what I'm talking about and why she could be telling the truth, or maybe why she's not. Let's see. Ironically, many of the children's TV presenters from 1970s turned out to be raging pedophiles. I know who you're talking about. I personally, again, I've done a show on that. And I wouldn't say raging pedophile, like a person who really liked teen girls. I'd say more of a teen girl guy. But anyway, and certainly there are people who have, sexually assaulted children. It definitely happens. Younger girls, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds. There are pedophiles, but pedophiles, by the way, what she's saying, because she's 6 in this claim, that's pedophilia. If you're messing with a teen girl or someone's about like 12 years old, 13, that is not pedophilia. Pedophilia is a child that has not gotten even near being a young teen. That's a child. So don't confuse the two. When people keep saying pedophiles, they're half time talking about 13 and 14-year-old girls. Those aren't pedophiles. Epstein, as far as I know, I don't believe he was a pedophile. I don't see any evidence he was a pedophile. I see evidence he liked teen girls. That's not a pedophile. It's not right. It's illegal. What he did was wrong. Okay? but it's not pedophilia. That's an entirely different thing. So just to be sure we got our things straight on that. Well, it is a good question. Dead body. Wouldn't that start sticking to high heaven? How would they have stood that? Well, they could have just killed her, I guess. She was in a cellar, I suppose. I'd be crying for my parents and grandparents, you would think. Although her parents apparently, I don't know what happened to the father in this, but the mother's supposedly the one trafficking her. So that's what she says anyway. Let's see. Amber Heard would struggle to come up with this sort of stuff. Oh my goodness. All right. So let me go on now. So anyway, now she's saying that she felt the only thing kept her positive in life was feeling attractive to men. So that was supposed to keep her from drowning in a sea of shame and self-loathing. After 4 years of surviving the network, when I was 10, so supposedly now she's been trafficked for 4 years. Okay. I don't got every weekend she goes taken to an orgy. I don't quite get it. By the way, she talks about some of the stuff they did to her, and yet when she's telling the story on YouTube, she says she doesn't have any scars. Now, I find that fascinating. I have more scars than she does, apparently. So I mean, how would you go through this kind of violence that she is supposedly going through and not have scars on your wrists, scars, just different scars everywhere? Evidence that you've been through years of some kind of assault, But okay, so it goes on now. She's now 10. A new guest brought along his 20-year-old son, tall, dashing, blonde, and blue-eyed. He boldly advanced toward me. I smiled, and he called me a little whore. Because he's a nice guy. Not since the first time I'd been brought to orgy 4 years earlier had I expressed my true feelings. I was furious. So now this guy calls her a whore at 10 years old, and she's just so mad. You think I like it here? I sneered. This interaction started the most intense year of my life, in which I would feel more than ever loved, seen, and understood, and would be more than ever abused, all by that same young man. So he's raping her for a year, but she feels loved. And more than ever. I was of no use to the network. A year later, when he was through with me, I was of no use to the network anymore. Why? Why is that? She's still only 10 years old. What could he have done to her that would make her not of use to the network? The only way possible would be if he actually abused her to the point where he disfigured her. But she's not disfigured. She looks just the same. And now she's of no use because what? One man spent too much time with her as opposed to 100 men? Okay, I don't get it. So after then I was no use to the network anymore and was to be killed. When my torture began, he stood watching and laughing. This is the third time that my entire being became filled with an otherworldly force. Fierce pride straightened my body. A burning cigarette was put out on my forearm. My energetic body latched onto his in pure defiance. I thought, I don't need you, had become me, right? And all I saw was the energy behind the troubled ocean of blue in his eyes and the love in spite of all the pain he had passed on to me. Is this 50 Shades of Grey? I just don't get it. All right. It goes further. I was led away to a small room and strapped onto a butcher block. The man who tortured me was one of the defendants in the notorious Dutroux case. This is the big case. Which when it broke news in 1996, was believed it would blow up the Belgian pedophile network. But instead, 8 years later, only Marc Dutroux received a life sentence. I should have died that night in 1974 in that butcher block, but my life was saved at the last minute. While I had been tortured, the young man had been negotiating with the politician in charge of the network. They made a deal. He would work for the politician, extend his shady services in exchange for my life. Yeah, because that psychopath would really want to save her. Sure. This one good deed eventually cost him his own life. So apparently got killed for doing that, which again makes no damn sense. Who cares? She's just a kid. If there's so many kids in this network, I don't think she's that important. So her life was spared, and I was told to remain silent forever. It took me 40 years before I could speak up. Okay, now get this one. In 1988, when I was 25 years old, I was walking downtown Los Angeles near Skid Row, and I got a faint, specific whiff of human feces and was assaulted with the memory of the extreme humiliation I had suffered as a child. My instant thought was, now get this quote, if this is true, I'm going to kill myself. If this is true. She had a recovered memory. So she didn't remember actually being at an orgy and forced to do what she said she was forced to do. She had a recovered memory when she was 25 years old. She said, if it was true. So now if she says, if that is true, how many other things are possibly not true? If any of this is true, she said she was going to kill herself. I was too identified with experience and the shame was too great. I wasn't ready and pushed the memory back into the subconscious. It would take, okay, so it came forth from her subconscious and then went back. It would take many years, many more hours of therapy, to finally share this memory with one safe person. Therapy. And a lot of problems when these people go to psychotherapists, the psychotherapists encourage them to recover memories. And there's a whole argument over the validity of these supposed recovered memories. And people come up with the strangest things when they go through this process. Things that I think are fabricated in their own minds. Like she says she's had dreams and the dreams are just really actually what happened to her. As if a dream can't be something else. You could have one thought, but dream another and have an exaggerated thought that's creepy and all that stuff, but doesn't mean it actually happened to you. And so these recovered memories, I believe, and they're encouraged, keep going, keep going. And so a lot of times you can keep going and you can then come up with, well, I met this guy and he did this to me. And it isn't necessarily so. And she says she's now at a place of healing and she wants to help other people. And so she suffered from PTSD and she's become mindful of triggers and she's just surviving daily life while trying to heal from this. It takes 1,000 times more strength than other things. Power addicts, world leaders, and corrupt politicians who abuse children are themselves like children who never grew up, driven to power to avoid or feeling the humiliation of the child abuse again. And then she goes on. Now she does yoga and she reaches out to people and she's encouraging people to recover from child sex abuse. Well, child sex abuse does occur. It does. And children sometimes are sold into some of these things. And there are also situations where, let me go to Dutroux, which is the guy she's talking about. All right. Mark Dutroux was a horrible human being. And I want to point this out for two reasons. One is that there are some groups of people committing horrendous sex acts. I do not believe they're as widespread as people say, because usually if you're in a lot of places of power, there's limits to what you're willing to take a risk on because you want to maintain the places of power. So there's levels of these things. So like with Epstein, yes, I don't believe he ever was doing satanic child ritual killings on his island. I do believe because he had lots of money and a fancy jet and his little helper, who has now been convicted, that other wealthy people went with him places. I believe that. And I believe many of them went and nothing happened. They just went and came back. But I do believe there are some who he cozied up to and they cozied up to him who may have indulged in some of the young ladies that were also present there. And I don't mean children. I mean teen girls, 17, 16, maybe 15, depending. I believe that those girls then, they hung around just like they do in Hollywood. Same thing happens in Hollywood. The girls are hanging around with them. They're brought in by the rich guy and they buy some pretty clothes and then they go to the party and then they come in and then he introduces her to so-and-so and then why don't you go hang out with so-and-so, and then things happen. And she knows it's going to happen and she goes along with the program because she still gets money and all the fancy stuff. And so it is a form of sex trafficking, but it's not what people say it is. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. But it's not like there's a bunch of 5-year-old children being raped and murdered on Epstein's Island. I don't believe that for a minute. Other stuff happened, but not quite that. And in this case, this guy was pretty nasty. His name was Mark Dutroux. He was a convicted Belgian serial killer, rapist, and child molester. He was convicted in 1989 of the abduction and rape of 5 young girls, along with his wife and some accomplices. Now, key in on the word abduction. All right. These girls weren't going back to school on Monday. These girls were abducted. He was suspected of kidnapping, torturing, and sexually abusing 6 girls between 8 and 19. The girls he usually got were teens. So it wasn't so much he was a pedophile. He was actually like the teens. There were 2 girls he got at one time, and they were 8 and 10, I believe. And he said he never raped them. I don't know what the issue with those girls was. Maybe he did decide to try something younger. He had a basement, and which he turned into kind of a little torture chamber, and he did do that. And there were some other people that kind of cooperated with him because I guess they got some kind of a deal. Let me tell you what happened. He was part of a gang led by 2 gang leaders. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, this is all right. I'm trying to figure out. It's a very complicated case. I'm just going to have to link it below. So it's a very complicated case of a whole bunch of sleazy people who were able to abduct or lure teenage girls, mostly except for that couple of girls. And he also robbed a 58-year-old woman who he beat, and I don't know if she died. So he had a lot of pornography. He didn't sell child pornography or anything. He had a lot of pornography in general. He had some videos of him, I think, having sex with the teens. But he definitely had a dungeon. And a dungeon is something that serial killers do sometimes, especially when they have a female accomplice. I've seen quite a few, the girl in the box under the bed, and you've got J.C. Dugard. She was kept in what could be considered a dungeon. Essentially, she was trapped for years, and that's happened with serial killers who have accomplices. And in this particular case, he had a dungeon. And he put the girls, when he kidnapped them, he put them in that dungeon, and his wife was supposed to feed them. And I guess a lot of times the women will go along with this because they don't want to have sex with their husbands anymore. So they'd say, well, these girls take my place, I'll help out. Yeah, nice couples, Anyway, apparently, while he was out of town, she forgot to feed any of the girls that just didn't want to, so they starved to death. So pretty horrific. I mean, it's a grotesque whatever thing here. So we've got a kidnapped 12-year-old who was cycling to school. Remember, I always say when they're kidnapped off the street, they're not kidnapped into a sex ring. They're kidnapped by serial killers. This is called a sex ring, but it's really a serial killer and his buddies. So it's not, again, she's not getting kidnapped and then being sold, and trafficked to 100, 200 different people. It's not that. She just got kidnapped and put in a dungeon. And she was raped by Dutroux repeatedly. That one guy raped her and raped her and raped her. Then Dutroux and one of his buddies kidnapped a 14-year-old while she was walking home from a swimming pool. Okay. And then they put her in the dungeon, and I guess they both raped her. And then the two younger girls, I'm trying to figure out where the 2 younger girls went. It's a pretty messy case. And so, this did happen. Now, supposedly there was another fellow, and she mentions him as she mentions Dutroux as one of the people involved. And I see no evidence whatsoever that Dutroux ever did anything to her. And she was, again, only 6 to 10, except for those 2 girls. All of them were teens. So here we have a guy named I can't pronounce his name, Michel, Nihol, Nihoul. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He was a Belgian businessman and convicted felon. He was subject to a big case with Marc Dutroux, but because they alleged that he was involved with some of these things that are happening. But he didn't get, he got 5 years for drug trafficking and criminal association. So they didn't prove that he himself was involved with what happened with the girls, but he is a scumbag, right? Then there's people who then said, oh, there was satanic stuff involved too. So, but here's the important thing. This happened when he was arrested in 2010, I believe, around 2010 was when he got convicted. And when did Dutroux get convicted? He got convicted in 1989. All right, so this woman didn't come forth for years and years and years, and now she's had these recovered memories, and she's come forth, and she's named these two guys. What are the chances that she actually wasn't trafficked in any way, but that she's read these stories, and now she has made those her stories? And she comes across very believably when she talks. She comes, you think, I go, oh my God, this is just horrible what you've been through. I can find zero proof that this is true. I look to say, is there proof? Was there any reason to know that she had did her mother know these guys? Was she in the same vicinity as these guys? Was there anything, any place that actually proves that she had any contact with these people, and that she was ever abducted? And well, she never said she was abducted. She was only sold and went back to school. Was there any proof anywhere? And I can't find it. I can't say she isn't telling the truth, but I can't find that there's any shred of proof that she is. And so what happens is we can get people who are great storytellers, and they can, in an instant, and people don't understand this, in an instant, anybody can come up with this kind of thing. I'll tell you my story right now. I was in New Jersey, and I was the youngest of three girls. My two sisters were like 3 and 4 years older than me, and I was a little baby that sort of came along later. And my father was in the government. He worked at GS. He was a GS-18, GS-18, a highest level worker in the government, and he worked in the Navy Department. He had a lot of top secret stuff he worked with. He made a lot of trips to a lot of unusual places, even to the middle of Greenland, to work on something that was out there. And I never knew what really he did a lot of the time because he didn't talk about it very much. But what happened was, he always told me that if for any reason somebody kidnapped me for state secrets, that he'd never pay the ransom. And that was, it's really hard to hear from my own father wouldn't save me. That I guess for the sake of the country, my life was just not as worth it. And he wouldn't pay it. And I always had that thought that he didn't have my back. I'm his own daughter, his little daughter. And yeah. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. But then one day, it seems that at least what I ever figured out was that they got a hold of something on him that he knew, something that he should have protected, maybe some state secrets that he should have protected, and he didn't, and they had them. And that if he didn't cooperate, they would release those, and then he would be imprisoned for the rest of his life. So he told my mother we were going to have a father-daughter day, and he took me to this house. He let this man take me into his bedroom. I was only like 8 years old at the time. And the guy just did what he wanted to me, and then he just brought me back out to my father, and my father just took me by the hand and took me home. And and he told me, you don't tell your mother. Don't you tell your mother. And he made me feel ashamed, like I had participated for some reason, like I'd gone along with it because I wanted to be his little girl, so I was willing to do that for him. And so I was so ashamed. There was no way I was going to tell my mother. And then we had these father-daughter outings every few weeks. Just, I guess, when he was called, he brought me. And I lived that way until, and we moved out of town, and finally, somehow, I don't know what happened to change everything, but it stopped about the time I was 10. But that did damage to me for the rest of my life because it affected every one of my relationships, how I viewed men. And I just, hope that anybody else who's gone through that can understand, what we live with. Okay, that's it. That's my story. I just made all that crap up. So I had a wonderful daddy. I had a wonderful daddy, and he never sold me out. No, I just wanted to show you. See how I can do that in just that period of time. I didn't plan that. I didn't know what I was even going to say. I just made that up. Yeah, never happened. Great dad. Actually, he did say if I was kidnapped. I take it back. Actually, he did say if somebody kidnapped me because he and blackmailed. He did say that. He said I would never be able to give up the what I He did tell me that he could not pay the blackmailer, because once you start that, it never ends, and you can't set that precedent. And I actually believe that myself. So I actually got along with my dad on that one. Although I'm like, gee, thanks, Dad. But but other than that, great dad, always loved me, never took me to go with his friends into the bedroom. No, none of that stuff ever happened. And hopefully nobody will then cut this, they'll clip this thing. But see how easy that is? See how easy? And I'm not even trying. I didn't practice this. I didn't come up with a good story. That's how quickly you can come up with something in 3 seconds flat. So if you want, the thing is, you don't need to prove things these days. To prove things actually happened. I see nothing where she's proven anything. And I'm not saying it couldn't have happened. I'm just simply saying there's not one shred of proof that it did. And nobody is requesting her to prove it, because, when you start saying that, people get really upset with you. How could you? This woman went through hell, and now you're asking her to prove it. How could she prove something that happened to her when she was a child? I mean, it was happened between the time she was 6 and, what was it? Mostly 10, 6, and 4 years of her life. And she suffered for 4 years of life, the most horrific abuse anybody had ever gone through. And you wanted to prove it. What kind of horrible human being are you? Well, I just don't have I have no reason to believe that actually happened. And because all the Dutroux story is already out there and other stories, you can just latch onto the concepts of those stories, what people went through, and you just incorporate them. And the whole concept of satanic stuff going on and being chained down to things and having these satanic orgies, and she's seeing other children being killed. This stuff is stuff that is mostly, as far as I know, is for the majority not true. So especially in high levels of Europe, I just don't see that these satanic child rape parties and murders are going on like that. So, but there's people telling these stories, and I've heard them in the US too. There's all kinds of people come to me with their stories just like hers, and never any proof, not a shred of proof. So are there some bad people out there like Dutroux? You bet. Dutroux is a nasty piece of work. It's not like you can't have a few number of people, 2 or 3 or 4 people, get involved in something where they make a dungeon and 4 guys get together and rape or torture women. That doesn't make it a sex ring. That makes it a bunch of scumbags. And sometimes those scumbags are involved in other organized crime type things. They're involved in drugs. They're involved in other criminal activities. So they know a lot of creepy people. So it can be that under a circumstance like that, like a guy could have one couple girls he did something to, and then you could say, you take them, because now they're being passed around. But that's still not the same thing as a bona fide sex ring, which plans to do these things and says, we're going to kidnap this. We're going to kidnap so many people. We're going to buy so many people. We're going to get Natalie Holloway, and we're going to sell her to all these whomevers. Can something like that exist? Yes. But in a good portion of these times, it's a highly exaggerated scenario brought from something just gruesomely rotten that's smaller. And her story, I don't see the truth in it. So there you go. Oh, I'm a wonderful actress. Scarily convincing. I didn't even cry yet. No, I didn't get to the crying part. Oh. Whoa, it's easy to make up. Your dad loved you. No, my dad did love me. A great dad, wonderful dad, never happened. But as I say, you can make up this crap. Oh, he didn't make it in Hollywood. Not bad. Yeah, I didn't have a script. I should have had a good script, Oh. I think you're overdoing it, guys. I'm going to have to look at this later. No, I didn't get to do the real super crying jag thing. And so I apologize for not doing a better job. I really then I could have gotten that Emmy. Could the Could the person telling the off the grid stories be a person that was part of it instead? I don't think so. I don't think, personally, you know, I don't think she was part of anything. Either she was, now mind you, she could have been sexually assaulted when she was a child. She might have some stories that she can relate to. Okay. I just told you, my dad did tell me if I was kidnapped, he would not succumb to the blackmail. That is part of it. That's a true story. Now, what a lot of people do is take a true story and then mold it into something else. They'll exaggerate it, or they'll attach it to something. Like they could have been, let's say, sexually abused by an uncle who was living, and let's say some uncle was living in the house with them and he sexually abused her when she was 6. She might have that nasty little memory, but now she's enlarged it to something greater. She may have a bad relationship with mom. I would think if her mother was supposedly selling her to the elites, and I don't, you know, I guess she would have a bad relationship with mom. I won't spend the $26 on the book. If it were $2.99 on Kindle, I would have bought it. And not many people have read her book. It's interesting. It wasn't. She did not get a book deal, and I wonder if she couldn't get a book deal because she can't prove any of it. So she didn't get the book deal. Not that publishers care that much anymore, but it's not a really well-read book, probably because it's $26. But now she's on YouTube doing her YouTube thing, and she's got organizations. You can put her name in, and you can come up with a bunch of different things, but not anything that I find is solid proof of, or even partial proof of anything. I just can't find it. So yeah, embellishment. There's a good word. Thank you. By the way, I just had to laugh the other day because I'm watching Ken Mains. Ken Mains. He's his thing on Scott Peterson, and he's got the same problem I do. He can't remember words either. It was funny to watch him. I'm like, hey, we're 2 peas in a pod on that one. He says, I can't pronounce that word. Somebody told me I couldn't pronounce it. And I'm like, yeah, I've been there. So he's I like him a lot. Here Molly says, it's easy, and with encouragement from a therapist, you outdo yourself. There is a great truth to that. I have therapy people that I've known who I think do a very good job on getting someone to open up without getting them to be creative. Then there are those that will let people just come up with, they'll just let them go on and on about all kinds of things that not necessarily so, and never call them on that, because that hour gets up and the person's got to come back next week. So 5 years later, you bought yourself a new car with that person's money. So so you can sometimes there is an incentive to allow the person to create these stories and to get heavily invested in them, so that the therapy goes on and on and on and on, instead of going, okay, wait a minute, stop right there. What proof do you have of that? And they go away, So, and I don't think sometimes therapists recognize truth from non-truth, which I find quite amazing. So, again, it depends on the therapist, how much training they've had, how logical they are, how good they are just doing what they do. I say I've got my favorite people who I think would pick up on things really quickly, and I know other people who would probably go, oh my God, and just buy right into it. So the sad thing is, I like the truth. I like to know what the truth is, because I think we cannot address any issue unless we actually know what's true and what is not true. Because if it's garbage, it's garbage. And that's not how we want to approach it. Same thing with the bullying thing. Yeah, we want to address the bullying issues. We do in school. We want to address those bullying issues. But how do we address those bullying issues if we don't know all the ingredients that made up the whole bullying thing that happened? What is it? Is it the fact that we don't have proper behavior in the school period? Is it the overdose of social media? Is it families not protecting their children? Is it teachers being overwhelmed with too large classrooms and children with poor behavior? Is it the sexual stuff that's going on in the schools too young? Is it mental issues? Is it what is it? I mean, there's so many ingredients that if you only focus on one of them, you're just really not addressing the entire problem. So And the same thing is true with sex trade stuff. Children who are in end up in the sex trade one way or the other. There's a lot of reasons why children end up there and teens end up there, and it's different from country to country, and it's different from class to class, it's different from era to era. But we should know what the truth is so we can address how to help, how to solve the problem, and not go off on some weird tangent to solve something that doesn't even exist, or in the way people think it exists. I think that's really, really important. So I thought that was it's a fascinating story she tells, but I'm not highly, I'm not impressed that it's necessarily true. Let's put it that way. So yeah, you'll have to decide for yourself. I'll put the links below. You can look, you can check her out. But I just really wish people would be willing to be as rational as possible about the situation. And again, you got to take emotion out to a great deal, because once one gets very emotionally invested and says, oh my God, this is horrific. Oh, this can't go on. It's just as horrible. We can't treat children like this. You lose ability to be objective because you're getting so, because it is a sad thing. I mean, there are children. I unfortunately read way too many of those cases, and I've been involved in some of those cases. And I've seen the photos from some of those cases, and it's not pretty, and it's pretty horrific. And, when you look at your own children and your grandchildren and happy children at the park, the thought of anybody touching those kids and doing anything to them, it's revolting and sickening. So do I have emotions toward it? Absolutely. But when we're actually trying to make determinations on how, in other words, emotions can spur us on. I don't have a problem with that, because if we didn't have the emotions to spur us on, what would we care? So yes, we should have emotions to spur us on. But once we get wanting to do something, then we have to be able to say, okay, take a deep breath. Now let me be very scientific about this. Let me be very objective about this, so that we don't do the wrong things, that we don't make the wrong decisions, that we don't see things incorrectly, and that we do the best thing we can to fix something, rather than just point fingers and shriek and holler and cry. It doesn't do a lot of good. You got my undivided attention and had me questioning what you were saying. Oh my goodness! I'm looking forward to looking back on this and seeing if it was a decent acting job, because I really wasn't working that hard at it, but I just wanted to give you just a little feeling. Not that you believed it, but I had you going. Well, I did say to you from the beginning, I could tell you this story. You see, and I basically told you up front this was not going to be true, but I just wanted you to see how quickly, and people who, maybe aren't good liars. I hope now I'm not one of them, but I've been around psychopaths and dealt with enough stuff. I have posed before as people I'm not, for purposes of investigation. So I have done some acting stuff in the past, online and elsewhere. But so if you're not real, if you've never done anything like that, you might think, well, how anybody could just come up with that in an instant. But I'm a writer too. And one of the things I know when I write is that when I'm writing fiction, I've never used an outline. I start the book and I just start writing, and ideas just come into my head and they just come out on the paper. And it's almost like I'm watching a film as I'm writing it. It's very strange. I don't even understand how it works, but so you can put yourself almost the same way people do channeling. I've always laughed about channeling, because that's how you do channeling too. You just start talking and you keep going, and people get enthralled, and it's just a bunch of stuff. I can see that through that your loved one is trying to reach you, blah blah blah, blah, and you just get good at it. It's a stage show. You can become very good at it. So, and especially if you practiced it, and sometimes if you're going to actually come up with a story and you're going to do it on camera, you know what your story is going to be, you know what your expression should be, so you can be quite convincing. That's called, again, acting. So you're semi-believable. You have me listening well. It was an amazing job, Pat. I thought I missed something. You were actually being serious. Oh my God. Oh Lord. So yeah, but I say that's how quickly you can do it. And that's without any work. That's without any practice. That's without any planning. So can you imagine what you can come up with if you have some time to think about it? But even then, I said, when I read her thing and I saw that word "if" come through, that was a huge red flag to me, because she said, if this was true. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You just told me it was true. You told me a story about what happened to you, this grotesque story about what happened to you when you were 6, brought to this orgy. You told me the story. And now you're saying this smell reminded you of that. And if it was true, if. So you don't know if it's true. So she just, in telling us that story and not knowing if it's true, because she said, if it's true, there's no way. If she has to say, if it's true, unless she's corroborated it with somebody else, there's no way she can prove that is true, even to herself. Even if she goes to a therapist and says, okay, I must be remembering this. She has no way to know that that memory that she claims she suddenly remembered is true or it isn't true. So right there, she's told us a story that she cannot verify. Even in her own mind, she cannot verify it. So that means to me, this whole story, I don't buy it. I don't, and I'm just don't buy it. If she can prove it to me one day, fine. And I'm not saying she couldn't have been abused in some way, shape, or form, that she does have some memories of horrible things, true memories, that she actually was there. Things happened to her with a relative or a neighbor or whatever. And she has some memories of sexual abuse, but the story she tells about this whole elite network and the orgies and the kids being killed in front of her. Sorry, just don't quite believe it. Anyway, I think that is my final one for today. And I'll be back on Sunday for Scott Peterson. And Scott Peterson is still in prison. They keep trying to get him appeals over and over and over again. And more people are believing him to be innocent over the years. And this often happens too, because as time passes, the immediacy of what happened and the horror of what happened starts to diminish. And all you see is a guy stuck in prison. And the defense team continues to work to dredge up more and more things or create more and more things to create doubt. And whether they're true or not, it's hard to know sometimes, but it starts making people doubt. And so they're saying, why can't he get another trial? Why can't he get the first trial wasn't okay, so why not a second trial? Is he or is he not guilty? Is he not innocent? So I'm going to be doing some comparisons of people's viewpoints. I'm going to do Dr. Grande, and I'm going to sit here and just draw a blank. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let me find out. Where'd it go? Hold on a second. And Dr. Grande, and of course Ken Maines. Dr. Grande. The three people I'm going to compare what they've brought to the table. It's going to be Ted Grande, Dr. Grande. Sorry, Dr. Grande. Where is it? Where's my stuff gone to? Oh, Stephanie Harlow. So we have three different viewpoints on what I'm going to look at. I'm going to give you my analysis of the case as well, and what the defense has come up with. And is there reason to believe he should get a new trial? Is there reason to believe he's innocent? So I've looked at Dr. Grande's video on it. I've looked at Ken Maines' video on it. And I've looked at Stephanie Harlow's video on it. So we're getting a person who's in psychiatry, and we've got a person who's a detective, and we've got a person who is a YouTuber. And so I'm going to sort of compare all of those three things. So, and what I think about the Scott Peterson case and all the issues of that. So that's what I'll be doing on Sunday, which is just in 48 hours now. Cheers, bye. Nice to see you here, Joe, as always. And Conrad Roy. I'm not sure I know that case, but okay. See you on Sunday, Heidi, and bye, Molly, Doreen. I hope it is fascinating. And Stephanie Harlow is questionable and Scott Peterson, in my view. Interesting. Okay. All right. Sorry. Let's see. Would love to hear why they think he's innocent. Well, we're going to get into all of that. And thank you very much, Molly. I'm going to have fun in Amish country. That'll be in a couple of weeks that I'll be away for that. And that'll be nice. And let's see. Joe says, I used to watch Stephanie Harlow's channels a lot, but she lost me when she said she didn't think Epstein was dead. We're into conspiracy theory nonsense at that point. So I checked out. Oh, that's interesting. Well, this is something I always say about everybody out there. There are channels which I have absolutely zero interest in at all. There are people I think are total grifters. There are people who do stuff that is maybe not my style, but maybe has some value at different points. And so I've linked them, and I may not like everything they've done. I may not like anything they've done, but I like one thing they did. So I wanted to link that because they had something to say about that. And Dr. Grande and Stephanie Harlow and Ken Maines, I don't always agree with what they put out there. And I'm just pointing out their different viewpoints on things, because one is when we have the psychiatric viewpoint, we have the law enforcement viewpoint and investigative viewpoint, and Stephanie Harlow is a YouTuber. And she does not come from a profiling or investigative or psychiatric background. She's a YouTuber. And so she has a completely different way of doing things. And so I'm just trying to show what you might, if you were out there looking at, and then I'm going to talk about the defense team. So if you were out there in the world, you're reading the papers, you're watching different shows. This one says this one says that, this one introduces this. What can you get from these three people? And what should you be, maybe there's certain things that you might want to question that these three people come up with. And myself, I don't take myself out of that equation. So, because there's sometimes, and when people say, well, that person did one thing I don't like. Well, I'm guaranteeing you at some point I'm going to do a show and you're going to really dislike that show. And you're going to say, well, then when she went there, she lost all credibility. I'm like, wait a minute, you like my other 50 shows. Yeah. We're not perfect. So sometimes we don't see something the way somebody else sees it, or maybe we even just see it wrong. Maybe we are completely wrong. It happens. So anyway, yeah. So I'll tell you what my different thoughts on all of that is when we get there. So I'm looking forward to Sunday, and I got a lot of more research to do before then. So guess what I'll be doing tonight? Yeah, Scott Peterson. I'll see you then, Gavin. Wait, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. I always hit these buttons at the wrong time. I think it's kind of funny. I'm like, no, subscribe. It's free. Subscribe to the channel, support us, or join Patreon if you'd really like to be here with these great people in our Patreon community and be in all our chat rooms. Do that. Anyway, bye again.